Check this out. Can you see it?
I can see that, dude. Look at that.
Well, Led Zeppelin II T-shirt. This is a big one, and we're only in episode 2, and we're already covering what some rock journalists and fans consider to be one of the greatest rock albums of all time. That's quite the statement for a band that has about 3 or 4 of those that could justifiably be called such. But you did your re-listen this week, didn't you?
I did. After 9 tracks of Zeppelin 1 and just getting through a few tracks, obviously, of Led Zeppelin 2, you really feel like they unveiled themselves to the world by just kind of saying, pick your poison, if that makes sense. Like, they have so much versatility in these first 2 albums, and then you just think about the whole catalog and you're like, my goodness. Like, because again, we talked about it on the last podcast, but like, you sit down in your room, you put this record on, and like, you truly, it's like The Sopranos, dude. There's no way you're going to know what's coming next. So I think it's just amazing. I really enjoyed it. Season 1, episode 2, I'm going to discuss my personal experience with these songs. And man, it dug deep and brought me back in the web of the cosmic ethos of where I heard certain things for the first time that I think you're going to enjoy. So yeah, re-listen for the first time, arguably ever, top to bottom, without picking through things and jumping around. And yet again, was just awestruck and enjoyed it. And I did it actually, despite being 4 days between our last recording. I listened to it 3 times through fully, driving around and, doing Mother's Day and stuff like that. Actually, I guess I should ask you, man, how was Mother's Day weekend?
Oh, it was lovely. It was beautiful weather up here, so we were doing a lot of outdoorsy kind of stuff. And I was actually ending 1 day's worth of outdoor work in our fire pit and playing not Led Zeppelin II, which I've listened to a million times, and I did re-listen top to bottom for this, but BBC sessions, because that was very much the era in which this was recorded. Some of that was even recorded in the middle of all these sessions. We're going to get into all the recording and kind of the haphazard nature of it. But it occurred to me that this album, unlike one, there is a bit of osmotic, like a sponge. You listen to classic rock radio, you're on road trips with your parents, listening to whatever radio station they would have had on. And unlike one, this album had a good 3, 4, 5 tracks that were synonymous with classic rock radio. So before I even bought the thing and listened to it top to bottom, I had already heard either the versions on 105.9 WGKC or the BBC Sessions 2-disc live set I had, which is terrific. But to listen to it in its totality and see how they somehow made this very, kind of on-the-run recording session feel cohesive, like they would have all done it in one setting and not at 8 different studios and 2 different continents over 5 months. That's really cool to see, because this to me is every bit as, I'll say this, just like one, it doesn't feel like this is slapdash. It feels very intentional, and yet Jimmy says by the end of it, he was sort of done with these songs because he had been listening to it for 5 months in a million different recording studios, and he thought he might have had a clunker. Imagine that. Imagine thinking this was not going to land.
Yeah, sure. And there's some pretty infamous feedback from Robert as well, discussing his feelings on a lot of the tracks that were actually rehearsal tracks for the tour, right? So I think we'll get into that, obviously. But, yeah, man, here's the other thing, too, to think about. Like you just said, the airplay that this got versus one, right? This was like the arrival. This is like, okay, we know these guys are serious. Here's some tracks off the new album. I would have to imagine that there's a great deal of folks out there, our age demographic and above, below, where their first taste of Zeppelin probably came from Led Zeppelin II, just because of the overall essence of a lot of the tracks that kick the album off and then sort of shine light throughout. Obviously, Dazed and Confused, some of the tracks that we covered in the last podcast are known, but they would be considered a deeper track in discovery of Zeppelin, right? So I think it's going to be interesting, man. I'm super excited here about this one. There's just a lot of cool lore and and again, some personal anecdotes that I'm ready to fire away at. So
This is, if you don't count Physical Graffiti, which was a double album. So when they track the sales of that, it counts for two. This is the second best-selling Zeppelin album in terms of just total units sold. You can guess what number one is. It's 4. Yep. So really, it comes down to Led Zeppelin 2 or 4 as if you are the average Led Zeppelin fan, not the one that pores over every single record and reads all the liner notes and says, I love Boogie with Stu. You're just average Joe Zeppelin fan that would pop a cassette in their car on a road trip or on your pontoon boat during summer vacation. Guess what? You probably had 2 albums on that pontoon boat. 2, 4. Yep. If you had to nail it down. And over the years, I think, 1, it's grown in terms of its stature. I think it was always thought of as a very good debut album, but I think its importance and influence has really been recognized. But 2, the difference between that and 1 is not just the fact that the band, and especially Robert, I think, matured musically, and his voice especially, I think there's a little bit different tone to it. But I think there's just this weird sense that for a band that had certainly had a meteoric rise over 1969, by the time this album drops, it was like preordained. And what I mean by that is there was no doubt by the time this was released in October of 1969 that this was going to be massive. They already had a following live. They already had their only real hit single in America playing on not just FM but AM radio stations and Whole Lotta Love. And it's shipped a bunch of advanced units. This was a band that just a year earlier was recording their first album in Olympic Studios after just a month's worth of rehearsals. That is nuts, and something that it would take 4 virtuosos for that to even be possible.
Yep, absolutely. The other interesting thing too is just the the heavy-handed blues rock that came with Zeppelin I, right? And I don't want to revert back. Obviously, we've got a whole episode dedicated to Zeppelin I, but it wouldn't be this pod. It wouldn't be us discussing this without kind of the hand-in-hand lineage of how 2 was received. And some actually state that this was like a subtle birth of quote-unquote heavy metal. Right? They came in with kind of a whole new sound in some essence for the true Zeppelin songs. There's still blues influence all over this album, but it's now their sound, right? It's that like you're listening to another band, you're listening to a new band, you're listening to a band that preceded Led Zeppelin, and people will say they've got a Zeppelin sound. That didn't come with Zeppelin 1, right? That's now into Zeppelin 2. That's after listening to these tracks through and through. They've sort of arrived, and I think the reception of that is they've now generated the Zeppelin sound, much like you could pick a Beatles song out of thin air and, the Stones out of thin air, right? It's now Zeppelin, right? So I'm ready when you are, man. I think we're well teed off and ready to rock and roll, as they say.
I'm going to start with this question. I should maybe wait on it.
Yeah.
But gun to your head, hypothetical, of course, 1 or 2. And I ask that because it used to be an easy response for people. You would look in, for example, I had this big book, a compendium of rock reviews called the All Music Guide. And if it wasn't the Led Zeppelin song by song book that I showed you last week that I was reading while I was having my Honey Bunches of Oats for breakfast, it was this All Music Guide thing. And it was pretty well accepted by the 90s that 2 and 4 and Physical Graffiti were the masterpieces. And then it was the odd-numbered albums, 1, 3, Houses of the Holy at 5, Presence at 7, that, they were really good, but they had their hit or miss. But now, over time, 1 has developed such a following and such an appreciation that it's a legit question. So I ask you, before I tell you my overall macro take between the 2, 1 or 2, gun to the temple. You got to answer.
It's pretty simple, man. Simple with a bit of a long-winded answer. I'm going to use the analogy of my children, right? You know them well, Collins and Brooks. I enjoyed year 1. I enjoyed year 2, right, with them. Collins is now going on 4, and Brooks is 2. I will look back at those years of infancy with fondness, but they are wholeheartedly more well-rounded and fun human beings now, where we can do things like enjoy a Dave Matthews Weekend with my 2-year-old, 3-year-old, without any thought that these kids can't hang despite being young. So that is a weird way of saying that I enjoy Zeppelin II in its fun demeanor more than one. Two could not come without one. That's obvious, right? But that's not we're not talking about that. One is not disappearing with the presence of two. It's what do we enjoy better? I just like the arrival, man. I like that they finally decided, despite being on tour and doing this thing in 8 million different locations with God knows how much pressure and parties and the allure of already at that point being world famous and touring and catching a following, that they somehow compiled this 9-track record on the tail end of one in what some believe is just magic, right? I think they rode the adrenaline and then they started implementing each other's influence into the sound. And I will wholeheartedly hit on this in this podcast, but my MVP, when we get to our
I'm excited
awards,
for that.
I'll have a lot of reason behind it, and it's solely because you can tell each individual artist amongst the four really brought it this album, and they may have been just a titch reserved during Zeppelin I. So, yeah, man, I take two because it's fun, it's well formulated, and it's coming off the tail end of a great Zeppelin I. I want to hear your answer now.
It's two, and I don't know if the gap is that wide. But I do think that even in the way that the band regards it, it's two in how they regard it and how the average Joe fan would regard it in terms of sales numbers. And I think even for the really big Zeppelin fan, because while one has this really cool kinetic energy to it, I think you hit on something, the fact that there is enough of it that is derivative. Not in a bad way, though some critics back then would have thought it to be bad, but it was Zeppelin doing a Willie Dixon blues song. It was Zeppelin doing a traditional folk song by Anne Breeden, but making it their own with Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. It was Zeppelin adding this acoustic interlude that was derived from another thing. Here's the thing. They have plenty of stuff on 2, 3, 4, and beyond that were influenced and sometimes, let's be honest, even lifted, parts of songs that were lifted from others. But for some reason on 2, it feels very much more like this is Led Zeppelin, not Led Zeppelin playing the role of any other genre or musician that influenced them. So I think it's 2. And you know what occurred to me too? I've never seen Zeppelin. You haven't either. I mean, how could we have unless we paid buku bucks to see them in 2007?
Right.
Do you know, I did see Robert Plant and Jimmy Page together. I did see them, and I dug up the set list. So this is 1998 at Madison Square Garden, Market Square Arena in Indianapolis. How many Led Zeppelin II songs do you think Jimmy Page and Robert Plant played on their Walking into Clarksdale tour that I saw in 1997?
Would it be too far-fetched to say, I want to say 7, but 6?
5, which for an 18-song set list.
There's one that clearly they could not play in Moby Dick, so that was out. A few others that obviously would have been super deep cuts to bring out, so 5 makes perfect sense. I just, given your approach there, I thought it was going to be a hefty number. 5 is fair, though, but I mean, it makes sense, and I think the takeaway here when we go track by track, people are going to realize, hopefully people listen to this podcast and it's prompting them to go back and listen, and they're going to be like, holy shit, all 5 of those are on this album.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, man, is like they were coming from a place in early '69 where blues was still very heavy, and it still is during Zeppelin II, right? So the takeoff of them formulating their own full sound, it was like a slow adoption. They were like, let's slowly meld into this. And there's one song specifically, as we go track by track, that I had this thought occur to me. We always talk about us. We talk about our reception. We talk about our dad's reception. That is taking the approach of somebody that enjoys rock music and experiencing this for the first time. I had a thought today when driving. Admittedly enough, I had to get a late afternoon coffee because I knew that, tonight was going to be a late one. And I was listening to a certain track, which we'll get to, throughout the podcast. But I thought about like one of our grandmothers, who obviously is our dad's mother's, walking in on certain moments of these tracks on Zeppelin II. And I mean, holy cow, dude, there are moments with Robert's delivery where it's like pseudo pornographic. And I would just wonder, like, this is why some rock songs and albums got such a bad rap back then, because they were so provocative. And I'm looking forward to that too, because I was laughing. I was like, we always look at it from our preview. Like, I would have been so excited to be driving down the road and hear him come on the radio with, well, here's a new one from Zeppelin, and then just Black Dog pops on. You're like, holy shit! Like, your brain explodes. But what were our grandparents thinking? Like, that's an interesting.
They go from Glenn Miller Orchestra to the sounds of Robert having an orgasm during the psychedelic interlude of Whole Lotta Love. Yeah, I mean, just the thought of them walking in on the here's the thing.
Shake for me, girl. We're just gonna get to it right now because that's exactly what it was gonna be. Shake for me, girl. I want to be your backdoor man. I mean, my grandmother would have been like, okay, well, there's no read between the lines on that, Robert. That's just a pretty direct delivery. So
the beauty of Backdoor Man, and it struck me the first time I knew that was an option, was to be a backdoor man. It can either be the more obvious kind of literal thing, right? Okay, whoa, hello. But also, it's like, I'm the guy that comes around when your fella is away. So sure. That's the PG-13 version.
In 2025, no one is a stranger to those type of thoughts. I think, we're talking about, we're still in 69 right now, and a whole lot's happening in the world, but the presence of being conservative households is still very prevalent, right? So these type of lyrics are an interesting thing to think about this day and age, man. I mean, that's the big, probably overarching theme between these two podcasts so far, is that it's easy to talk about these things now, but I really love, throughout the journey so far in Zeppelin 1 and 2, putting myself in the shoes of, kind of, to the best of my ability, living in the moment of when these albums would have been released, and just trying to, like, remove all knowledge and all lore that I have in the brain, and just letting it ride and thinking about the reception as it plays out. So,
and that's what we'll try to do on episode 2 of our first season or series of Drop the Needleheads. Mike Carpenter, Schmiggy here with Ben Yates, Yahtzee. Hello, Ben.
Greetings. Good evening.
Podcast listeners out there. I mean, it's so funny because there's certain things that you do with podcasts that almost sound like radio intros or something like that. Here's ours. I'm going to try this the best I can. Drop the Needleheads with me, Schmiggy, Ben Yates, Yahtzee. The records spin, the bourbon flows, and the breakdowns, at least for this series, are deeper than the inside of John Bonham's bass drum. Today's album, Led Zeppelin II, an all-time classic rock and roll record. We're starting with the heavy hitters, and we didn't have to wait long to get to what is one of the best-selling hard rock albums of all time. Before we get into the recording process, the background, we'll do a track-by-track breakdown of this album. We'll get into our categories as we did in episode 1 and maybe add a new wrinkle at the end of it. Ben, I mentioned that when I saw Jimmy Page and Robert Plant in 1998 at Market Square Arena in Indianapolis, this is June 9th, 1998, the 5 Led Zeppelin II songs, if you were to guess what they were, what would you guess they'd have been? And you were correct to say that Moby Dick was not one.
Okay. Well, Whole Lotta Love.
Yes.
What is and what should never be?
No.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
I think that the range in the chorus, if you think about it, they stopped playing that after maybe 71, 72. And that chorus can be taxing because it's all high.
It is, but also that was the first track that Jimmy kind of unveiled to the world in an on-radio interview that he had. That was his track that he chose to kind of say, here's an essence of what Zeppelin II is going to encompass, probably because it is unique in the fact that it's different than one on anything that is on Zeppelin 1. And also it's just kind of like, here we are. This is a different taste of what you can experience. And okay. Wow. So Whole Lotta Love,
right?
Heartbreaker.
Yep.
Ramble On.
Yes. One more riff.
Did you get the Lemon song?
Nah, that would have been great though.
Bring It On Home.
Yeah.
Livin', Lovin' Maid.
Not Livin', Lovin' Maid. We'll get into that one later. A ballad of all things that Robert wrote for his wife.
Oh, okay. So is it Thank You?
Yeah, they played Thank You. And in fact, so here's the set list. This is not a bad show, man. And I remember we were way in the nosebleeds, but they opened with the Wonton song, which at this point I didn't have physical graffiti, and it sounds somewhat similar to Immigrant Song, and I was like, well, that's not Immigrant Song. Okay, Bring It On Home, number 2. Oh, yeah, here we go. Heartbreaker, number 3. Ramble On, number 4. So they do a 3-song run from 2. Walking into Clarksdale from what is a pretty decent album that they released. No Quarter, number 6. Shining in the Light, another good song from those two. Going to California, Tangerine, Gallows Pole. I remember that being my favorite part of the set. Heart in Your Hand, one of their own. Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. How Many More Times? I don't remember that. I would have lost my marbles, I think. Down by the Riverside, traditional song. Most High, one of theirs. And they end the show with Whole Lotta Love, Thank You, and then Rock and Roll. So 2 from 4. 5 from Led Zeppelin 2. 3 from Led Zeppelin 3. So you see just kind of the diversity there.
Incredible diversity, and it's impossible not to just address this right now, right? It'll be forgotten by the time we actually get there, but I will bring these two up a whole lot. The Elmores, right? Kenton and Don. Kenton, for those listening.
Legends.
Dear friend of ours, part of the 7, as we call them, and Don is his dad. They live in Champaign, best friends of mine growing up, and Don had an infamous CD player that was mounted just below their cabinets, right? It was one of those like new age CD players that just had 2 small speakers, and it was above the microwave, tiny as can be. And Don was notorious for just picking up a couple new CDs on his way home here and there. And the first time I ever heard No Quarter, right? There's a theme here in Zeppelin 1 and 2 that I listened to a whole lot of Led Zeppelin thanks to Don Elmore. Listened to the first ever No Quarter that I ever heard was at the Elmore's house, and I'm just curious, while we're in the moment, what your thought was with your dad in Indy listening to that live.
No Quarter, you know, it's funny.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have appreciated it as much as I do now. I think No Quarter was a grower for me.
And
yeah,
the first time I heard it, and that's the reason is I'll never forget that moment. So,
and you know what's so cool about that song? I can't wait for Houses of the Holy, because that to me is kind of a controversial album in my mind as far as, you know, where it really stands. But No Quarter, we will, both you and I will probably,
and you know, I'm a Tool guy.
Praise on it.
You know, I'm a Tool guy, so I will look forward to that episode, and we shan't get there too soon. But yeah, that hearing that set list and knowing, man, I mean, you and your dad, geez, you guys have a laundry list of amazing shows that you've experienced, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of some of those. But
my mom and sister were there too. We ate at the Johnny Rockets at Circle Center Mall.
Oh, dude,
yeah.
I lost a suede-brimmed cowl hat with the Elmores on a spring break trip there, and realized I left it in the booth at Johnny Rockets. Went back for it, and they said they didn't find it, yet I could see right through the kitchen, and one of the busboys was wearing that damn thing. So,
God damn it.
Johnny Rockets is apparently infamous, man.
You know, when I'm about to take a field trip with my 8th graders to Six Flags, they have 2 Johnny Rockets at the Six Flags Great American Gurney.
Sure, they're French fries. I wonder if those are still
probably garbage.
They're probably terrible.
Well, there goes our sponsor. My bad on that. They might be great. I don't know. I have no idea. Now, before we get to the itinerary, we got some things to cover. Forgot to tell you this series is called The Pod Remains the Cast. These are the episodes we'll do for Led Zeppelin, released once a week, and we will get through the studio discography, ending with Coda, which in and of itself is an outtake album. We might discuss some of the live ones there, but we will go in order from 1 to 2. Next week, 3. Week after that, Zoso, 4, whatever you want to call it. Houses of the Holy, Physical Graffiti, Presence, In Through the Outdoor, Coda to wrap things up before we decide who the heck we're going to do after this. Let's talk, Ben, about Led Zeppelin II. The question I ask you is, where do we begin? What do we talk about first?
So, I want to keep it close to the hip in terms of our itinerary. We typically will start here with background and history of the album. So, when and how the album was made. We will run through recording stories, band lineup, studio trivia, cultural backdrop of the time, right? Not so much different than Zeppelin 1, so there won't be a whole lot to report there, but maybe some new happenings since the last album, and then cover art, which specifically on this one is going to be a pretty good section, followed by track breakdown. So, Mike, let's kick it off with when and how the album was made.
This is fun, man. This was a deep dive. I already knew from all the Led Zeppelin books that I read that this was a very intense recording process, kind of done on the run in many recording studios, which makes it all the more impressive from a production standpoint that they somehow were able to make this sound cohesive. So here are some of the things that I discovered when kind of pouring through my old books. I got a bunch of Zeppelin books here. I also was going online, so it's a little bit of half-assed internet research and a little bit of the old books that now, I mean, literally some of these Zeppelin books, the pages are yellowing is how often I've used these things. They're flagged, like they would say at George Costanza Bertano books in Seinfeld. These have been flagged many times in the bathroom. I won't go into any more detail.
Words of Finding Forrester, for God's sakes, you've dog-eared one of them.
You know what I remember from that? What I remember from that movie is he wore his socks inside out.
Fuck, that's a deep cut.
Do you remember that?
No, Ken and I, here's Ken again, but Ken and I have watched that movie thousands of times, dude, and I'm not sure that I would have, like, dude, that could have been the $1 million question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I probably would have fucked that up. No, I didn't know he wore his.
Yeah, he says something like, I can't do, it keeps the seams from getting my toes. Or I don't even know. I can't do Sean Connery. But yeah, it was something about that. It was him. It was like a black teenager, and he befriended him, mentored him. Yeah. Gus Van Sant? Was it a Gus Van Sant movie?
I think it was Gus Van Sant. Yeah. Jamal. Yeah, good times. Great movie, but yeah, every time. Hey, here's the thing, too, man. For listeners that are unaware, Mike and I, long friendship, same band, same group of friends to this day, talk multiple times a day. But Mike and I actually lived together for many years. And
never watched Finding Forrester, though.
No, we didn't, but we lived in a few different apartments, and I shared an apartment bathroom with Mike, and his rock literature or the Porcelain Throne was deep. So there was never a rarity in what my reading could be, and there was definitely always a Zeppelin book in the bathroom without question.
Yeah, so, no doubt. I mean, here's the thing that always reminds me of is in the movie Kingpin, someone stops by Woody Harrelson's really crappy apartment and it's like, hey, man, I need to take a shit. You got a magazine or something? He's like, I don't know. Here's a tub of toothpaste. He's like, oh, okay, that'll do. Just it's weird how the human intuition is I need to be reading something when I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Anywho's it. Led Zeppelin is growing in stature. In the summer of 1969, they're playing gig after gig after gig. You're starting to get into festival season. Looks a lot different than it does now, but at the time, you'd basically have one stage set up in a park. You'd have 15, 20,000 people show up. Zeppelin was becoming pretty synonymous with festivals, a big one in Dallas that summer, a really big one in London, and I think it was the Bath Festival later that fall. They did skip on Woodstock. They could not come to an agreement on it, and I'll be honest, I don't think that Zeppelin musically, stylistically was really a fit. I know that The Who and Jimi Hendrix were there, and they got some violence to their music. Can you imagine Zeppelin at Woodstock?
They talk about butterfly effect, right? And I don't know, man. This could take us down a rabbit hole, and Twitter would go nuts, X would go nuts. But my take on it is it probably did the band more good than bad not being there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if the essence of where they were at career-wise would have meshed with the takeaway of Woodstock. And I know you and I did some deep dives, circa 2006, 2007, where that was like our bread and butter. We watched endless documentaries and things on Woodstock for the time. And yeah, I don't think it, the takeaway here is I think it would have brought on a whole different essence of Zeppelin to the U.S. You sort of had to go see them. It was still very much like, I'm going to go see Zeppelin, despite being at a festival. Dare I say, force-fed Woodstock may have just sort of unleashed them to some masses that may or may not have been ready at the time.
No, I think that it would have been tying them into a movement that was dying. If you think about the Woodstock bands, The Who were different. Jimi Hendrix was dead within a year. The Who lasted. But I look at my Woodstock poster, which I have one behind me just because it's kind of like a token thing you put in a studio. And a lot of those bands, it's just like, okay, they didn't last long. They were done. Country Joe and the Fish, what the hell? So I think it actually worked for them. They liked control, and they tried to make sure that when it came to gigs, especially by that summer, they had as much of it as they could. But as far as recording, the control was really kind of in the hands of their tour itinerary. So many different studios between April and August of 1969. So we were talking April, May, June, July, August, 5-month recording session. These were slapped together between gigs on the road. Zeppelin, by the way, how many gigs do you think they played in total in 1969?
I feel like I've seen the numbers, so this might be unfair, but 400.
No, that would be like double, triple headers. No.
Okay. Yeah, no. I want to say probably close to 80 in real time. Is 80 close?
139.
Okay, wow.
106 in America. So they were they had some European gigs, were not initially super well received in England, but it was America, which will be part of the possible alternate album title I come up with later. Engineered by Eddie Kramer, who was most famous for working with Jimi Hendrix on Electric Ladyland and a lot of his later sessions. So April 1969, this is how the sessions begin. Olympic Studios, London, which is where they recorded their entire first album. Whole Lotta Love, What Is and What Should Never Be. Basic tracks completed first. I will say, they make sense in the 1 and 2 slots in the album. I think sometimes there is a benefit to writing an album somewhat sequentially. And it seems to me that they said, okay, we got our 1-2 punch, and then from there they could build it on top of that with things that they were jamming on the road, working on in hotel rooms. May 1969, now they're in the middle of American tour. In Mystic Studios in Los Angeles, they record the basic tracks for Lemon Song, Ramble On, Moby Dick. That's in Los Angeles. The same month, Heartbreaker at A&R Studios in New York City. June 1969, the last 2 cuts that they had to record for the album, Thank You and Livin' Lovin' Maid, Morgan Studios in London, as they had a brief break from the road in America. This, to me, Ben, is the most interesting thing. They mixed this whole thing in 2 days. 9 tracks, 5 different studios, 4 months, 2 days in the end of August at A&R Studios in New York City. You got Eddie Kramer, legend, engineer and producer, and Jimmy Page, producer himself, literally turning the knobs as the reels are putting this onto acetate for the final mix. Whole Lotta Love, an egregious example of that. And this is a quote that I thought was really interesting from Eddie Kramer. Unlike the first album where Glenn Johns said, hey, I was the producer, what the hell? Eddie Kramer said, we cut some of the tracks in some of the most bizarre studios you can imagine, but in the end, it sounded bloody marvelous. There was one guy in charge, and that was Mr. Page. So that was the tumultuous and yet ultimately fruitful recording sessions. Chaotic, to say the least, but it ended up in an album that somehow was able to take that chaos, keep the energy, and yet paste it and meld it together in a way that made sense. That's really cool to listen to this album knowing all that.
Insane. I also dug a quote out from Kramer discussing, where is it here? I had it in my notes.
I got a few more from him, too, because there was an article I found of him explaining some of the songs and how they recorded it.
Yeah, no, I just dug into the famous Whole Lotta Love mix, where everything's just going nuts, as they put it, bananas. And it was a combination of Jimmy and Kramer flying around the small console, twiddling every knob known to man, as they put it. And we cut some tracks in some of the most bizarre studios you can imagine. Like you said, but in the end, they sounded bloody marvelous. So I just thought it was like, man, can you imagine just being a fly on the wall, during that process? And like I said earlier, like they're touring. They are, I'm the type of guy, man, where I'm so secular in my attention span and my energy that the thought of knowing that our second album was, for lack of a better term, taking flight. Hey,
Hey.
And, we're still touring. We're kind of getting a hang of this band thing together. And they also, deep down, as any realist would do, is thinking like, how long is this ride going to last type of thing, right? And like, we can't make a mistake at this point in our career. So a lot of thought and also a lot of trust, from the other boys and Jimmy. To be doing this thing simultaneously as they're jumping through tour hoop after tour hoop and going across the pond and back to the U.S. and so forth. And pretty much getting it done. That's like bootstrap mentality and real rock and roll, but it's just stuff a legend, man. It's not stuff that you would do now. You hole up and you record an album and you slow play it to the masses and you market it. So it's just incredible to hear that all this came together that way and the result is what we have. So
Yeah, that was the summer and the fall that broke Led Zeppelin. If you think about it, in January, February, March, they're playing the likes of the Fillmore East and West, and that's not small potatoes back then. But these are, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 seat auditoriums, standing room only theaters, whatever. You finally get to the summer. The first album has saturated itself on FM radio. So Days of Confused gets some play. Good Times, Bad Times gets some play. Communication Breakdown, I'm sure, gets a little bit as well. And that album is gold, I think, by, I don't know, May, something like that. So that's really not. I thought that Led Zeppelin 1 was a slow burner in terms of the public consciousness. For rock music fans, it wasn't that slow of a burn, but for the general mainstream audience, it was. And yet, even so, without any hit singles, they had already developed this reputation and this following where they're able to build this anticipation for an album released a mere 9 months after the first one. Now, that's not uncommon back then for bands to release 2 albums a year. But when you consider their workload on the road and the fact that there's not much, if anything, on this album that feels like, all right, guys, we just got to fill space, throw it on there. Yeah, that's the cool part of Led Zeppelin II, and it does capture something that it captures a different energy than any other album, minus, and this is why I'm excited for Presence, that album and Led Zeppelin II. The similarity they share is this sort of Jimmy Page in a moment where he has to really hunker down and just get the shit done. He does. So as a producer, this is, I think, even more impressive than Led Zeppelin 1. I know they did that in 36 hours. They did this in a bunch of different places. There was no home field advantage or home studio advantage. It was just, where are we at? Record it. There were literally places, as I was reading this, Ben, where they would go into a studio for just a harmonica overdub.
Yep.
And that was it. And now you've got a harmonica overdub, and it's got its own reel. And you take all these reels and what, a suitcase? A duffel bag? What do you do? How do you label them? With masking tape? Harmonica, Robert, Lemon's Song. I don't know. Does he even play harmonica on Lemon's Song? I don't think he does.
Yeah, no. Apparently, Thank You, Lemon Song, Moby Dick were overdubbed during the tour, and mixing of A Whole Lot of Love and Heartbreaker were done on tour, which is just like, what and how?
You mentioned Fly on the Wall.
Yeah.
Whole Lot of Love mixing session. Jimmy Page has been quoted before saying it was like a performance in and of itself. And that makes sense. To know, they did a few pass-throughs of it because you can do a mix of that, especially the middle section. Listen back. Oh, that's cool. But next time, right before the drums crack in, and you might have noticed this, we're about to get in the tracks here, but it goes, there's this weird thing, and it starts going left, right, in rhythm. Did they do that the first time? Was that mixing take number 8? How many did they do? It's cool to think about.
Yeah, no, that's, I think that covers it, man. I mean, there's just so much here, but to me, it's just, the overarching theme is just bootstrap mentality, right? Like we have to simultaneously do this. We've got to tour. We've got to get our name out. We've got to play live gigs. We've also got to push out a second album, and clearly made it happen. The other thing that I want to touch on, Mike, is obviously the for the bullet points that we're going through. Artwork is a bullet point that we have, cover art. And it's a pretty interesting one here. So
take it away. I don't know much about. I know the general conceit of the album cover. As far as album covers for Zeppelin go, it's not, to me, one of the more aesthetically pleasing album covers, and yet it just kind of works for the material inside, and it fits in a weird way, this sort of industrial brown for the sound that you're about to uncover when you open it up. So what did you find out about the history of this album cover?
Well, it's interesting that's your takeaway because it had the nickname Brown Bomber, amongst other things. The thing about it, though, Mike, is my dad had these albums, and I distinctly remember just the orange with the brown, and it stuck out to me. Like, this was just a cover that I couldn't really make sense of. I don't know why, but, like, I have a photographic memory. I know that's a debate right, amongst the human race, but like legitimately, I can see myself sitting on the floor of my parents' attic room with the album and just looking at it and trying to decipher what was going on. So I wanted to do a little back in research and digging on how this came about, and it was a photograph taken from a World War One group of fighter pilots. It was a poster done by a gentleman named David Juniper, and he was told by the band to come up with an interesting idea. And he was actually a fellow student of Page's at Sudden Art College in Surrey, right? So a little bit of a personal tie there. But this specific division of the German Air Force during World War I was called the Flying Circus, led by the Red Baron. He replaced 4 of the flyers' heads with photos of the band members, right? So it wasn't just like a serendipitous idea just to like implement this thing. It was somebody's thought, and they kind of went into it. So the blonde-haired woman is French actress Delphine Seyrig, in her role as Mary Magdalene in the film Mr. Freedom, a leftist war satire. The cover also pictured the outline of a Zeppelin on a brown background, similar to the cover of the band's first album, which gave the album its nickname, Brown Bomber. So the craziest thing about this whole thing, Mike, and this is why I wanted to make sure to point it out, is this actually got a nod and a Grammy nomination for an actually pause
best album package sort of thing. Yeah.
So best album package. So technically, it was like the band's first, Grammy nomination.
Very few
for this. But I just found that interesting, man. I wholeheartedly, because it was something that I noticed as a young kid. I was like, this is just the first album just makes sense, right? Like it's a Zeppelin and it's burning and it is awesome. And this one was strange in the fact that it wasn't like the first, and it was kind of undefined as why it is that way. So the other interesting thing throughout its reception is when this album was released, there were some takeaways for Led Zeppelin, The Only Way to Fly, and Led Zeppelin II, Now Flying, which I think is funny because we do have a segment during our awards where we do an alternative album title. But copies of this album actually were released with those sayings, The Only Way to Fly, on their spine. So I would assure that if you found any one of those copies, man, you've probably sitting on a gold mine, but pretty interesting. So
that would be like the turquoise lettering Led Zeppelin, which go on eBay, try to find one of those. Yeah, this album cover is, again, not the most aesthetically pleasing, but it's sort of brutal tone works for it. I think that, it's funny how these things become synonymous. I don't know what comes first. Like, take the cover of Dark Side of the Moon. If the album sucked, would it be as cool of a cover? Aesthetically, I think so, but there's no doubt that the music inside of it adds this extra level to the imagery. So Led Zeppelin II, by itself, if the album stunk, then the album cover, you think, what the hell is this? But the album doesn't, and it actually kind of works. I think that the Led Zeppelin II thing, another thing to note is the fact that this is the last time on a studio album that they had any sort of Zeppelin iconography, meaning an actual Zeppelin or flying, that kind of thing. Led Zeppelin 3, psychedelia. Led Zeppelin 4, some kind of hermit guy with sticks on his back. Yet that still resonates. Houses of the Holy, naked kids on a mountain, great. Physical graffiti, a tenement building, presence, homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, In Through the Outdoor, a scene from a bar. No more Zeppelin iconography in the other stuff.
You're right. And can I tell you the one last thing on this album cover before we lose all of our listeners because we're not getting to the track rundown? The other thing that this album reminds me of, you and I both had it. It was a Dave Matthews Summer Tour shirt.
The
exact same color brown with almost the exact same color cream as the Dave Matthews bubble lettering. It was a terrible T-shirt, man, but it brings back such fond memories to me solely because you and I were together in St. Louis. We went to a show, and amongst the tailgating and the sweat from the summer and the show, we got back to the hotel, and you wanted to do a load of laundry.
Well, this is what it was. Alpine 05, after a really hot show, we get back to the Holiday Inn Express.
Could have been St. Louis.
No, but there's a St. Louis tie-in with this, too.
Yeah. Okay.
So '05 Alpine, super hot show. Get back. Hey, you want me to throw some stuff in the laundry? Yeah, sure. Okay, great. Because we were sweaty, just disgusting. I throw it in just assuming because I'd never done laundry in my life. I'm 19 years old. Like,
Pause. Because in that moment, I thought to myself as you're exiting the hotel room and I'm sitting there, I was like, incredible. I was like, what a guy. Like, I didn't know he knew how to do laundry, but like, this is going to be great. Like a fresh set of clothes going into tomorrow. This is amazing.
he
Well,
brought detergent, so I didn't. We throw sweaty clothes into hot water, just let it rinse around and spin a little bit. I bring it out, we dry it, bring it back. Here we go. It's clean. No, it's not. It's disgusting. But then the next year in St. Louis, you threw my T-shirt. You either threw it in the pool or I don't know something. And
no.
who even knows?
Trying to remake our own Zeppelin stories with our young
with our Dave Matthews trips.
Adolescence Dave Matthews trips of debauchery at a very nice hotel with pools and things like that.
So
no, the album really resonates with the brown from those T-shirts and just immediately spawned the thought in my head that I've seen this before. I have seen this before. The other thing, man, is you pretty much go through a catalog. You go through any large level record collection, and this was a color hue. This was a theme. Even just the imagery of it, like, kind of reminds me of that still frame Cheers imagery. You know what I'm talking about? Like the old, style. So I truly enjoy it. The reception that I've always felt about it was, this will be a fun exercise later on in this series, is rank our favorite Zeppelin album covers. Spoiler alert, this one's up there for me.
Wow.
So.
Okay. I think that I can understand that. I see how that kind of sepia-toned stuff works. It would be towards the bottom for me, but that does not in any way reflect how I feel about the album, and it's 9 tracks. Is that a good transition? Did we do okay?
We did great.
Hell yeah, okay. So that means we're going to do the track breakdown?
Yep, let's ride.
Yeah, let's do it. What's the first track on Led Zeppelin II? I always forget.
Haha.
Whole Lotta Love. Okay. This is a battle cry, an anthem, whatever you want to call it. I know it is something that you've heard a bajillion times. I encourage anyone that if you've been like, yeah, Whole Lotta Love, I know it's a hit of theirs, but I've heard it, whatever. Next time you're in your car, just turn that shit up and just drive and listen to Whole Lotta Love. The riff was developed in late summer of 1968 by Jimmy at his boathouse on the Thames in Pangbourne. They showed that house in Becoming Led Zeppelin.
They did. Mike, I know it's well off the beaten path, but any chance you and the wife are going to try to visit that spot while you're on tour across the pond?
Yes, we looked. It's a bit too far. I think if we will go back to London. That will be a European place that we will not just hit up once. So I think that next time I'd be like, hey, babe, let's take a day drive out to Pangbourne. Or maybe not Pangbourne. I want to go see Headley Grange from Led Zeppelin 3 and 4 where they did all that stuff. So Whole Lotta Love, the first song recorded for the album, Olympic Studios, April 1969 in London. Further overdubs added at A&M Studios in Hollywood. The opening cough. Think about that. This is a number 4 hit in America. It starts to... Okay, you got to have the cough. It's not a Whole Lotta Love without the cough. And the vocal leakage from, and this is such a cool moment, way down inside. And then you hear on your cans, or if you turn your stereo up loud enough, there is leakage from another vocal take from Robert, echoing that, right? It's kind of like pre-echo. Eddie Kramer says, big mistake, happy mistake. He sounds like a nice chap, Eddie Kramer.
Yeah, sort of like a, Bob Ross, just a happy little accident.
Do you think he's British?
I am going to go on a limb and say yes. The other thing there, man, is that song is not that song without that happy accident. I mean, today, literally this afternoon, same exact excursion to get my afternoon coffee. I find myself singing the bleed. Like I take that part. That's my part. Also because, and I'll just address this now, that you and I have some personal ties to this song because it was part of our live repertoire in terms of the covers that we would play. There's a quintessential moment in the breakdown, right, where it's like two notes, and Mike knew notoriously that at this point of the show, I typically was feeling pretty decent with a few beers or a few libations, and he would yell out across the drum set, D A, so as not to forget what two notes that I had to execute on during that break, which is probably one of my favorite moments. The other takeaway on a serious note is that if you quickly just do a quick overview of the time on these tracks, 1 through 9, it differs greatly from Led Zeppelin 1 in the fact that there's like a crisp 4 to 6 minutes max across the board on these tunes, right? There's no 8-minute sagas like Zeppelin 1 to fill a whole side. So a whole lot of love, in my opinion. I mean, you hit a good tune, 5 minutes, 30 seconds, top to bottom. To me, a whole lot of love seems even longer than that in a good way. But the personal takeaway for me, I don't know, anytime that you actually know how to play a song on an instrument and you're listening to it in the car, which is the ultimate song test, right? You put it on in the car and you blast it. It's just a fun tune, and I can only imagine writing it, touring and playing it, and then also having it released and it catching stride like it did. Not to mention the fact that it's leading off this album. It's just like, again, same tune as Led Zeppelin 1. It's like, here we are, and strap in, because the next 8 tracks, you're really in for it. So
there's no other choice to open this album. I mean, it's just a great opener. It was written first, recorded first. I think that they recognized pretty early on what it could do. The live debut of Whole Lotta Love, April 26, 1969 at Wonderland Ballroom in San Francisco. That was a big gig for Zeppelin. San Francisco in April was one of their early moments where they felt like they were really kind of breaking. Jimmy played this on his 59 Gibson Les Paul, like other songs from Led Zeppelin II. There is a bit of a different tone from what you hear on Led Zeppelin 1, which was very heavily Telecaster. Zeppelin's only top 10 single. This leads a quick little note about this. Led Zeppelin and their manager, Peter Grant, adamantly against releasing singles. Occasionally the record company would finagle it, but this was one where they had an edit with a very slimmed down midsection and a little bit shortened fade out. Last song ever performed by the original Led Zeppelin in 1980. So John Bonham's last performance, Whole Lotta Love. It was the first encore at their 2007 reunion concert. So this has just been a staple in any Zeppelin-related thing. Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes, their closer, Whole Lotta Love. Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, Whole Lotta Love. Set closer, encore closer. So recognized by fans and the band alike to be one of their classics. What else is there to say? I mean, what do you... Okay, 1 to 10. I'm not going to put a gun to your head this time, hypothetically speaking, but scale of 1 to 10, the middle section, the psychedelic freakout section. What do you think? Because I mean, the older I get, the more I like it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, no. To fit that all into 5 minutes and 34 seconds and still come out on the back end and finish strong, it's like, what just happened type of deal. Not to mention that it's an opening track. It's, I don't know, almost mirrors in a very small way something like, a Pink Floyd song, like in a moment, and then like a flash, it's gone, and you're back to Led Zeppelin. So if I were sitting in my room with the candle lit and I'm listening to this track, it's probably one that I'm not sure I would go on to track 2 yet. I may
take a break,
start it again. Well, I may restart it again because it's just one of those things where you hit that moment and then it finishes just as strong as it starts, and you'd be left like, I don't know, man, like a good movie with a sequel. You're like, do I dive in all the way? Because, man, like, I don't know, just the average listener, I would, knowing myself too, I would fear that I would be disappointed, which you won't be, but that's probably why Led Zeppelin is who they are, because it's the essence of then what is next. I got to move on, but the more I listen to it and the more I think about my first experience with it, it just continues to deliver, and then you learn a little bit more about it. The bleed throughs that you just mentioned, I really had no idea that was an accident. I'll be honest with you until today. So you learn something new every day. It will always now resonate as I listen to that song. So I listened to it at 4:30 p.m. today, and now I will look at it differently forever. So not in a bad way either. It's just
Yeah.
interesting how those little facts just will add to the list. So
John Paul Jones in this song. What has struck me, the guitar sounds great, but it's not super overdriven in the intro riff. It's not like he turned his amp up, at least the way it sounds on record, to 10 or 11, as Nigel Tufnell would. John Paul Jones' bass, when that comes in, that drives the song. It's the bass.
150%. No spoilers.
I know where you're going.
JPJ is a staple in this album. He's across the board, and that I say it a lot, man. I've said it a lot in the first pod. I'm saying it now that there are people that subtly come alive. There were tracks in Zeppelin I where Bonzo was just like literally carrying the band, and to carry the weight of all the boys in Led Zeppelin is no small task. And it's not that anybody else has fallen behind. It's just you clearly can hear through the cans or in the car that someone has picked up their step and everybody else is kind of following in suit. Whenever JPJ's bass hits in and you're listening, it is so noticeable. And to be a bass player during this time frame in rock music and have your bass stand out amongst the likes of Jimmy Page, John Bonham, and cut through Robert Plant's vocals. Come on, man. Like, there's no way to articulate the fact that a subtle listener is hearing that. And typically you're the background, man. You're the backbone of the song, but you're not the flashy guy. You're in to JPJ's credit, he is exactly that. He is sort of happy being in the background and just being a part of the gang. But my God, I mean, he makes his presence known in a whole lot of love, and he rides it through pretty much every track on this album. So excited to discuss him along the way here, but I'm glad you hit on that early because it would not be fair to wait to discuss his entry onto this album because it happens there and it doesn't stop.
It does not. John Paul Jones, that bass, I swear to God, every time they take a break, like coming out of the psychedelic freakout, his bass is a little bit louder. And then after Robert's You Need Love, it's even louder. You even hear, honestly, a little bit of clipping and distortion at the end of it because Jimmy, I think, on the mixing board is like, I want this shit loud. And to me, that's also a mixing choice to have John Paul Jones' bass come through like that. One of the greatest moments in Zeppelin's entire discography is coming out of the psychedelic freakout. You hear, like he's going left, right, left, right, left, right. And there's one final kind of groan from guitar as a boom, boom. I know we've heard it a million times. It is so good. And you listen to it loud, and that guitar solo, right channel, hard right, it tickles the eardrum. Yep. And the E, the boom, boom, hits so goddamn hard, and then they come back in for another verse. Robert's rearing to go. And then another thing, too, Robert throughout this song, his little one-liners. I'm going to give you every inch of my love. It's not just that he's using these blues standard lyrics, but it's the way he says it and the swagger with which he says it. It is just bananas how good this shit is. And just, I liked it. I've always liked Whole Lotta Love. But then you listen to what's really going on in that track. It was a hit for good reason because it does grab the average listener. But over the years, there's all these cool treats and trinkets in this thing on top of what is just a monster performance and a groove. John Bonham, I can't say I love Whole Lotta Love without mentioning the groove with which he puts into this song. It could be played straight and it would just be a ham-fisted riff rocker. It's not. His groove is just so behind the beat in the pot. Oh, it's so good, dude.
This song, along with Bulls on Parade, are easily two of my favorites historically that we had the honor and pleasure of playing together with our band. And I'll never forget kind of my wife, obviously, when she saw us in our reunion gig, when we all came back together in Champaign and played, this was on the list. And then obviously Bulls on Parade was on the list. But Kenton's parents, Don and Susan, sort of leaned in. And I remember distinctly when we got off stage and went to the bar, at the Cowboy Monkey, Susan Kenton's mom, Susan Elmore, looked at Emily and was like, "Did you know that he could play?" And she said no. Like she knew I was rehearsing for something at home, but like I don't think you necessarily understand like the gravity of like our band over the years and stuff. And then Don sort of chimed in and was like, I mean, obviously we never missed a gig when you guys were young and stuff, but you never sounded better. And I was always like, that meant a lot to me, but also I realized like we sort of had a helping hand in the fact that we chose tracks significantly. Some originals that we have in our pocket, but then stuff like this, right? Whole Lot of Love, Bulls on Parade, where like I can't help but think this song is great, even if like half executed. And to hear it done with those moments like you just spoke of, you know, and it's like that arrangement is what we took away and sort of reformulated on stage. And, you know, our family and loved ones heard it and they're like, oh man, like that was an incredible performance, which was humbling. Again, I'm not tooting our own horn here. I'm getting to the fact that there's a reason that we chose that to play live and then chose it for our reunion gig as well, because to me, it always delivers. And it's easy for me to pick that track out as one that I love on this album because, again, we played it live. So it always adds a different essence to it. I feel like we didn't give Robert a ton of flowers on that, even though it's so Robert fucking Plant, dude. We're going to get there, but there's a lot to be said. Any other anecdotes, any other little tidbits about Whole Lot of Love before we move on?
No, I don't want to wax its balls too much. I do think that it is an anthem for a reason, and I think that you kind of talk about like our reunion gigs and stuff. The older we got, the more you realize, and I think this is just as a player or as a listener, a groove, and not having to play everything fast and not having to play everything even super loud. It's not like during the verses John Bonham is beating the crap out of the drums. He does on his fill out of the psychedelic freakout. But the groove itself, there's some ghost notes. There's other things where he's really just kind of settling into the groove and letting the natural volume take its course. I just think that groove is, if there was one word to describe Whole Lot of Love, it's not loud. It's not pulverizing. It's either groove or it's sexy. So that, I think, speaks volumes to a band that I don't think on the first album there was a lot of sexy stuff. I think there was a lot of good riffs and hard rock, headbanging shit you can turn up in your car. There was nothing remotely as sexy as this.
Right. Yeah. Led Zeppelin 1, you felt Robert was coming off of multiple occasions where somebody pissed in his Cheerios. This one, like, he found those folks. There's some backstory and lore that I hope we get into here of what that looks like, who he was loving on during this time frame. But it definitely comes through in the lyrics and the delivery of the way this album was done. The quintessential Robert Plant, man. He's got, 8 buttons unbuttoned on his blouse, and he's sort of arched back in his back with the microphone hanging in front of him and stuff like, his oohs and his ahs just in this song. I think the amazing part about it is they found out a way to fill the space. So he knows. Kenton can attest to this. If you've got a band that's tight and synced together and they make this powerful noise, you can easily just get lost and thrown to the wind, right? Where you're feeling constantly like you need to catch up and be heard. I think they found a significant way for him to add a level of that sexiness, that vocal ability and range. Not that he needs any help whatsoever. It's Robert Plant. But he used those subtle moments, those lighter moments in this song where he rose kind of above, and it was just subtle lyrics that resonate. And then the overall delivery, right, is just a classic. I mean, just to start off Led Zeppelin II. So, yeah, I think we delivered there.
I mean, it was worth. I think, given its historical importance to Led Zeppelin, it was worth giving that song its due. Now, there's other good stuff on this album. Track 2, What Is and What Should Never Be, according to GuitarPlayer.com. So, a version of, and this is, you were kind of alluding to this, Ben, a version of the song was recorded on June 24th, 1969 for the BBC at the Broadcaster Studio in Maida Vale, London. And during the session, DJ Brian Matthew interviewed Page and asked him to select a track representative of the forthcoming album. His choice, What Is and What Should Never Be, explained Page. It's got a bit of everything. So that was the quote you had referenced earlier. It was part of, with Whole Lotta Love, the original recording session, or the first one, April 1969, Olympic Studios. There's this term, Ben, that gets thrown around with Led Zeppelin. I don't know if they coined it themselves or fans did, but light and shade. Light and shade. This song personifies that idea, and while it's not acoustic, it's all electric, it still has a lot of dynamicism and really kind of hints to the dynamics they were going to pursue further in Led Zeppelin III. This is kind of a classic song in a quiet way.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have sheared from going the full catalog. I refuse to go past Zeppelin 1 when we were on Zeppelin 1. I refuse to go past Zeppelin 2, and I'm pretty dedicated about it, man. Like, it almost just auto started for Zeppelin 3 after my first listen, and I was like, I can't yet. I don't want to go into it. There's a reason behind it, so my statement next may change as we go along here, but there's two intros, both on this album, that as a kid, as an adult, as a Zeppelin fan, I would put up there with my two favorite intros of all time, both for Zeppelin and just in general. It would be from What Is and What Should Never Be. I don't know what it is, man. Like, when you put that track on, it's like the sky split and something's happening to me. Like, I'm so ready for it. And the same is said about Ramble On, which we will get to. But, like, both of those have such a high standard for me, and I think it might be a little bit thanks to Almost Famous, maybe a little bit thanks to an Entourage or something where, like, subtly, without me even knowing it in the subconscious, these tracks were played, and I'm just like, good times, and I have good memories from different instances where these tracks make appearances. But also, man, they're just, I don't want to also blow smoke just for the sake of blowing smoke, man, but in those two tracks that have arguably my favorite intros, they're just perfect, man. Like, and this song kind of gets forgotten because if you walk up to anybody and say, hey, Zeppelin, what is and what could never be, they'd be like, huh? But then you play it and they're like, oh, yeah. I don't think enough people know the title of the song that they love, if that makes any sense.
This is one that everybody know. If you ever listen to classic rock radio, you probably even heard it there once or twice. But you're right. It's not one that's really been put on the Zeppelin, the few greatest hits things they've done. It was played live through 1972 because it's on How the West Was Won. But it's not on The Song Remains the Same. It was sort of shelved, and the only thing that really became representative of Led Zeppelin II on classic rock radio was Whole Lotta Love, Ramble On, and then we'll get to Heartbreaker, Live and Love and Maid. For some reason, those two were always played right next to each other. What Is and What Should Never Be was not. Thank You, in a weird way, that as a ballad, I think probably got more play on FM radio as the years went on, but this is one that, in becoming Led Zeppelin, they had audio and video of this from the Royal Albert Hall concert, and there was a Led Zeppelin DVD box set. And I don't know if we watched this a whole lot when we lived together or not, but it was a disc.
The desert with the blue sky.
Yes, you got it. Yeah, disc one was the Royal Albert Hall show, and they just nailed this song live. To me, there's this cool quality, this hypnotic quality to this song in both the quiet verses and the loud choruses, and I think that the band reveres it in some way. The fact that becoming Led Zeppelin, the last track in full that they show is them playing this live. And I thought, well, that's not really a closer if you were to make a set list, but I think that was purposefully chosen because that song showed a maturing band as far as songwriting is concerned. And on top of that, I mean, it's cool songwriting, but it still has your guitar pyrotechnics. If you think about the outro, the last minute 15, it's a great riff. So is the chorus riff, and then all the slide guitar, the very kind of airy verses, and the great guitar solo. It's not a word I'd use all that much with Zeppelin in the early days, but it's a beautiful song. It really is.
Yeah. I'm a sucker for Joe Walsh. right? And not to compare the two, but I think obviously they complement each other. There is just some like familiarity in the way that that moment right there that you just hummed, to me just feels like summer. It feels like just a good time, a pocket that you want to be in. These guys are the pocket. Um, so that, hey, let me pause real quick for Irish crickets.
You're good.
Go. Um, the
What are Irish crickets?
Oh, it's just another podcast. Doug Ellen and the boys from Entourage. It's something that Johnny Drama just will pause and open up a brewski for. So Kevin Dillon, shout out. How's it going? But yeah, no, I'm about to lose all credibility as we maneuver on here with any actual Led Zeppelin fans. But to me, this is like Dave's, what you are. Like it's one that, bringing up the fact that it closed out, being Led Zeppelin, it's like it worked. And it is probably a song that I wouldn't necessarily, if the boys got back together with Jason, would hope I would hear. This is one that I would literally have on the bucket list, best of what lineup are they going to come with, that I would hope I hear. But I wouldn't think that I was going to get it.
Isn't that weird? It's like if you were at the '07 London show and they played this 4 or 5 songs in the set, you wouldn't have been having a beer next door to the O2 Arena thinking, man, you know what I hope they play tonight? I would love if they busted this out. But you're right. If they did, then you would be like, oh, I really like this song. And by the time they get into the chorus and the crowd is belting it out with Robert, and then you get to the outro. And I really do think that's just such a great send-off for the song where, Jimmy gets to do a little bit of his primping and his posing on stage with down out. Just, oh God, it's so cool. Yeah, this is a great song. And I think that the number 2 spot after Whole Lotta Love, you mentioned You Shook Me, kind of had unfortunate placement on Led Zeppelin 1 because what the hell are you going to do? You just did Good Times, Bad Times, and Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Good luck, track number 3. Well, in a way, track number 2 has a bit of that on this album, but I think the song on its own merits stands up remarkably well, and there's a timeless kind of quality to it. So I think it's a gem. It really is a gem, and I think all the more reason to look at this album and say, man, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch to start things off.
It is, yeah. And I mean, as we maneuver on here, there's a few songs that I would argue could have been 2, could have been 1. I mean, fuck, Ramble On. We'll get there, but as I listened multiple times through from 1 to 9, the more sense it made for this to be 2. But it to me is kind of a catch-all song. It could be placed on just about any track number on any of Zeppelin's albums 1 through infinity, and it would have worked perfectly fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, then we get this album, if I'm to think about it, really only has 2 what I would call blues. First one is the Lemon Song. Now, this is credited to basically the whole band, and then it also is derived from Howlin' Wolf's Killin' Floor, which they say Killin' Floor as much as they say the word lemon, if not more. Yep. So Mystic Studios in Los Angeles, May 1969. Oddly enough, Ben, this was not a live staple. You'd think it would be because it was performed live in studio, but this was not ever something they did a whole lot live, hardly at all. Overdubs at A&M Studios in Hollywood in August 1969, not long before they just mixed the whole thing. This is just fun. It is a band that just feeds off each other so well, but I will let you start the discussion of this track with the star of this track, because I read a theory on the Led Zeppelin Reddit, and I would agree with this. What Led Zeppelin II does remarkably well is they give a track to each member. So you have Jimmy Page, Heartbreaker, solo. John Bonham, Moby Dick. John Paul Jones, the Lemon Song. It's his.
Yeah, man. Insane that you gave me this soapbox to stand on in terms of what he is and what this track means, probably to him and the band overall, and then what it meant for me. So, backstory, which I don't think you're even aware of, man. I would be shocked if you know this band, you probably do. Maybe 1969 veteran rockers from Champaign, Urbana, Tom Thady, Dave Laraviere, and Donnie Perino, led by Perry Hamilton.
Okay.
Perry Hamilton may ring a bell to you. He is like an infamous blues rocker in Champaign. Well, craziest part about it, when I lived at 209 South Fair Street, Champaign, Illinois, he was my neighbor. Really good friend of my parents. And oftentimes he'd be sitting in the backyard with my dad just chilling, and I would be on my way somewhere. Well, when I got into music, my parents bought me my first guitar. It was, man, 11, 12 years old. It was a red Squire Strat, and it was just to get me like in the nature of playing an instrument. I thank them for it because ultimately what it did was drive me directly into running into you and the boys and realizing I had no place playing guitar, which is when I picked up the bass. Flash forward to that summer, and I'm in the backyard talking to Perry Hamilton. He was in Bluesweed, which was a local band. They played throughout years in Champaign at Farron's and elsewhere. And I started talking to him about what I was doing, and I said, I've recently picked up the bass. We're playing some tunes. We're going to play live at a few school gigs. Perry had an enormous cassette collection, and he had like live cassettes. So he had cassettes that he had recorded, like Grateful Dead shows, Allman Brothers shows. There's an infamous story he told me about whenever he opened up for Edgar Winter, which was at a bar that was Brothers. It's no longer that Brothers that we know now, but it was at Brothers, and it used to be a more infamous live music location.
Mabel's was the name.
Yep. And I thought immediately in my head, I'm like, how the hell did Edgar Winter play at what I know as Brothers? I would love to see that just for the sole fact of how.
Before you go any further, the Black Crowes, the Smashing Pumpkins, they played at Mabel's.
Unbelievable. So, yeah, there's a lot of wishes of what I could have done in my hometown. But long story short, and apologize for the long-winded, thought-provoking explanation here for the Lemon song, is that I was in discussions with Perry about what I was doing. And it was that I was picking up the bass. And I was picking up the bass at a rapid pace of love. Like, I truly fell in love with it. It wasn't for a reason. It was because it was the last instrument to pick up in the band. Matt had guitar. Hazar had guitar. You were on the drums. We were kind of searching for a vocalist, which, funnily enough, is the way that I made my way into the band. But you all admitted that it was because you enjoyed hanging out with me and not vocal range.
No offense.
So thus comes the bass guitar, right? And over time, it was just like, yeah, man, I don't know what I was ever thinking because this is exactly it. And it's because of the pocket. It's because of what you can do with it. And Perry was like, man, I love the fact that you're sort of picking up the rhythm section. Drums are expensive and they're a bitch to carry around. So, the bass is sort of the guy that gets to show up early. He hangs out, makes relationships, and he sort of just does his thing. I was like, that sounds fantastic. So he pops next door as I'm still sitting there with my dad, and he comes back with like a handful of cassettes. And he gives me one, and he's like, this is the first cassette that I want you to play. And I want you to pay attention for track 3. It's called the Lemon Song. And I was like, okay, will do. And I look down, and it's clearly labeled in his handwriting, Led Zeppelin II. And I'm like, well, it's Zeppelin, man. Of course, I think I'm going to enjoy this. And he's like, no, just, give it a listen and listen to your part. Your part is what he said. So went and did whatever I did. Later that night, got one of those obnoxious, boom boxes that we had back then that had like the speakers that you could take off of them and put somewhere around your room. But it was just ridiculous that you would ever do that. And it had like 2 cassette players in the bottom, so I could record. So what I was doing was taking Perry's tapes and very carefully making sure that I did not overdub or erase them while recording my own. And on comes the Lemon Song. And I, in that moment, realized, like, beyond tracks 1 and 2, which I was already just awestruck at, that this is it, man. This is like who you want to be as a bass player. This is the pocket that you want to fit into. This is a guy that is taking over this track. And like you said, I mean, I think everybody was given like theirs, so to speak. But peculiar name. So maybe judging a book by its cover is on purpose, but you're going into it thinking like the Lemon Song, right? Like, what are they doing here? And then you hear what they brought to it, and you hear JPJ. It will always resonate to me with that flood of memories and like my first true experience listening to it the way it was intended. And just an incredible moment, man. I think just like I can still remember the cheap headphones I was wearing that were plugged into the boombox that, I was listening to quietly in my room, as it all sort of just came raining down on me. And I'll never forget it, man. So that was my first experience, and one that I've always got to tip my hat to Mr. Perry, who still lives in the hood. He's closer to you now, actually. Hoping when I'm back for maybe homecoming or something that I can cross paths with old Perry. But man, he's just a wealth of knowledge. Great guitar player, great blues band back in the day. And a major thank you for always resonating with my first experience of the Lemon Song. So with that, I'll kick it over to you, man. We're only 3 tracks in, but we're cooking now.
Yeah, well, I love that story. I mean, there is something about this track that even my dad and I, when we listened to it back in the day, when we would get through the whole thing and you realize just like, what's jamming? I mean, this is before we listened to any sort of thing that would be labeled a jam band. And what jamming is a band feeding off each other and reading each other, and that's what they do so well here. But it's John Paul Jones. I mean, the funny thing is, over the years, Ben, I can hum his bass solo. Boom, boom, ba-da-da-dum, boom, boom, ba-da-dum, boom, ba-dum, dum, da-da-da-dum. And then he does ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Like, oh, God, he's walking that shit, and he's so tasteful, and it grooves. And again, I love that Jimmy, mixing-wise, is giving flowers to John Paul Jones. Throughout this whole album, the bass is very prominent, especially for 1969. It is the playfulness of it. It's the fact that it is a band, just the joy of a band playing. And it kind of boggles the mind that it wasn't performed live, because I think it would have killed. I think the fans sort of ate that shit up, man.
Yeah, longest track on Zeppelin II. 6 minutes and 20 seconds, which may have had a hand in that. Look, I'm making assumptions here, but there's tracks that we discussed on Zeppelin 1 that were well over 8 minutes long. I have a feeling, given some of the heavy hitters that were on this album, thus the ones that you named, whenever you and your dad saw them in 98, that whenever you're talking about developing a set list for a live show, I am and would be disappointed if I saw him live and didn't catch this. But I think there's a clear reason behind it. But you also then think about the recording process, how everything was done, and then not really it being a staple. Even maybe not that they could really condense it down a whole lot, but just a live version is surprising to hear, honestly. And I would have definitely thought you would have heard it in come 98 at that point, because at that point I think they were starting to unleash some stuff that they didn't usually do live back in the day. So
who did a great cover of it was Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes. They absolutely kill it on that album. And I would encourage anyone that has not listened to Jimmy Page and the Black Crowes. That album is just phenomenal. Lemon Song especially. Yeah, fun. A band being a band at their peak. That's the joy of listening to Lemon Song. 6.5 minutes of, oh, right, these 4 guys in a room together, literally feeding off one another. That is a special treat with minimal overdubs. The ones that are there are... I mean, it's just, even that guitar line is kind of funny. It is a blues pastiche. And then you get to the lyrical breakdown with squeeze me, baby, till the juice runs down the leg. Squeeze me, baby, till the juice runs down my leg. The way you squeeze my lemon, I'm going to fall right out of bed. Now, that is a blues standard. But the way Robert does it, he makes it his own. The dude was still 19, maybe 20 at this point. It is oozing absolute, like, aggro, macho sexuality kind of. And I know and I recognize its silliness, and I love Spinal Tap for taking the piss out of things like this. But sometimes there is a time and place for just pure, silly, sexual innuendo. The Lemon Song. You're right. When you see the track list, you remember in episode 1 you talked about, you look at a track list, oh, Dazed Confused. I want to listen to that one. When I see a track list, I'm not saying the Lemon Song. I want to listen. I'm like, what the hell? The Lemon Song?
judge a book by its cover. I would look at this track list as I flip the album over when it's beginning to spin for the first time ever, and I'm probably thinking the opposite of I'm really going to enjoy that song, and definitely the opposite of I'm going to enjoy that song as much as I ultimately do. Listeners, do yourself a favor, as Mike said. Black Crowes, Jimmy Page. Not only the Lemon song, we're jumping ahead in years here, but Out on the Tiles.
Oh my God.
Tracks will absolutely knock your socks off. So you can disobey orders. You can go listen to those two out of order of what we're doing our podcast here right now. I unfortunately can't until we get to that point, but I will
It's
for
so
sure.
good. It's so freaking good.
You know, the only other thing that I'll sort of address here with this one is just its placement. Like again, as I'm going through the top to bottom here, I think the name helps its placement, man, because like if it was yet another great name track with the delivery of what we now know, you may feel slighted a little bit as you get in the tail end of this album. But leave it to them to just cleverly place this thing. And I'm also glad that you brought up Spinal Tap, because if you really want a good laugh and an adventure, go to Reddit and go to the thread where they are subreddit where they're discussing the reason behind the name of the Lemon song. I'm sure you won't leave disappointed. So
Just always reminds me of that scene in Spinal Tap where Derek Smalls takes the cucumber wrapped in foil out of his pants. Just the sexuality in rock, and it deserved to be lampooned. At the time that Lemon Song came out, though, it was not yet at full lampoon phase, which yeah, of course it got there. And Zeppelin, of course, no strangers to the occasional bit of, shall we say, I'm not going for debauchery necessarily, though that was certainly the case. Subtle they weren't sometimes. This is not a subtle song, but it's a fun one, and I always love listening to it. All right, side A ends with Thank You, one of Robert Plant's earliest lyrics, recorded at Morgan Studios in London, June 1969. This was performed live on occasion in the early days. I will say this, not the biggest fan of this song, but there is a BBC Sessions version that is awesome. And it's got a Jimmy Page solo, because he has to play electric on it live, that hits a little bit more than the acoustic solo, though it is quite tasteful on this track. So, Thank You, Robert Plant, ballad. Ben, what do you think about it?
Yeah. I have two thoughts.
Okay.
Thankfully, I've taken notes here. As I went along, I hope that we don't bring animosity or turn off the avid listener of Zeppelin.
Fuck that. Say
content. But I will say it. I think it also might be a compliment. But my takeaway initially and then throughout listening to this track over and over again, I do like it. Like I do all of their tracks. It just sort of falls flat for me because I think it goes from unfairly 3 tracks that, again, you're going through the listening for the first time. You're in your parents' house on that shag carpet with a candle lit, and you're like, God bless, what could possibly be next? You know, they keep building and they keep leaving me hungry for more, but like also satisfied at the same time, right? Like I'm just filling up on Led Zeppelin right now. 2 bands that came to mind in listening to this was Procol Harum.
Oh, yeah.
Procol Harum. And some of the Guess Who, man, like some of the lyrical delivery, these eyes are crying. It's like there's a lot of influence here too, and a great placement, man. I think like it does blend well with the times, given those 2 bands that I heard coming through the speakers as I was listening to this. Every time I listen to a Zeppelin track, I try to like do a little deep dive in the thought of how did they do this? Where did this come from? I'm not going to say that those were the 2 that lent Jimmy the idea for this track, but definitely something that resonates and comes through for me in 2 bands that I do enjoy. But again, its placement coming off the first 3 tracks, it's like it's not bad, it's good. It just is that moment where I guess you could treat it as a breather, so to speak. Um, or one, God forbid, I may use to go fill up the old beverage and take a quick pee break, only because I would be coming off an adrenaline high from the first three songs.
It's a welcome respite. It was needed, I think, for the track list. Also, what I forgot to mention with the Lemon song, what a great ending. Down on this killing flow, 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 flow. Fades out. Oh, that's cool. And then, na 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 na. Then thank you fades in. I think that tonally it works as a side closer. And it's sort of like the inverse of Your Time Is Gonna Come, which opens side B. This is sort of, it has some of the same things with an organ, acoustic guitar. It's got some pop leanings and sensibility to it, but it ends side A. So I think that it is the only track on this album that would have worked in that spot. I do think the track listing on this album is pretty much spot on. This is an example of that. It's not been one that's ever resonated with me personally too much, but there are plenty of people that adore this song, that love it. And actually, the fact that Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, what was the second to last song they played when I saw them? Thank you. I mean, like, they love that song. They did not do it in '07. And I don't know if anyone was expecting that necessarily, but nonetheless, this is a song they hold in high regard. This is a song that a lot of Zeppelin fans hold in high regard. And sometimes when I listen to it, I understand why. Because it is something different. It is sincere. It is earnest in a way that a lot of Zeppelin songs aren't. And I think they nail what they're attempting to do with it.
Yeah. Some of the Procol Harum-ism in it, I think, obviously, Jimmy played his 12 string. Something else interesting is that apparently Robert Plant wrote it as a love song to his wife. Okay.
Let's talk about that. Shall we?
Yeah, we shall. But I also want to get to this, and I want to ask you a question because this is truly a question that I don't know the answer to. I do know that JPJ played his Hammond organ on this track. Would this be the first track that we hear from Zeppelin 1 and 2 where the organ was on the full track as opposed to him playing the bass?
Well, Your Time Is Gonna Come has organ, but I don't know if it's the same one. I don't know if it's the same one. That has almost like a churchy kind of quality to it with that intro. But he would have been playing on Your Time Is Gonna Come. God, I have to go back and listen if he's doing bass pedals on the organ or actually redubbed bass. What you're going to find in Led Zeppelin 3 is that Since I've Been Loving You, the blues track on that is recorded live, except for the guitar overdub, the solo. And he is playing organ and bass pedal and doing pretty good bass pedal work, which is not an easy thing to do on top of that.
I was solely disappointed growing up when I realized that wasn't actual bass.
It sounds good, though.
Damn. Yeah, that's surprising and unbelievable.
And no false notes. He's playing with his feet. I mean, you would see, like, Geddy Lee would do that, and he'd cue up synth sounds sometimes. Well, no. I guess it would depend. If he was playing synth with his hands, then he'd play bass pedal with his feet. It's impressive nonetheless whenever you see someone do that because it is the ultimate left brain, left hand, right hand thing, like on a piano, where you're playing the bass clef with your feet. And you're playing the treble clef with your hands and sometimes in a lead manner. So thank you, Inside A. Wow. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. This band may have even gotten better from what we heard from the debut. Now we're going to side B, Ben. This is a very different beast. Heartbreaker. A&R Studios, New York City, May 1969. Overdubs at Atlantic Studios. Can you imagine? Here's John Paul, Robert. You know, they're sound check, let's say. I don't know if that's necessarily where this riff originated. It would make sense if it did. And Jimmy plays this simple riff, but immediately super tasty riff. And then here's what makes the riff take off, I think. The riff itself is indelible. There's a reason it's a classic rock staple. But it is when, like when John Bonham with a tasteful fill and John Paul Jones join in, it's the groove with which they play this riff that makes Heartbreaker the classic it is.
Yeah, agreed. And would you say that this is, as we said, everybody has their moment? Not that Jimmy doesn't have many, but this is his song, right?
Yeah.
This is it. It's unmistakable. I think as we talked about, earlier on with what is and what should never be, right? That it is known. You could pick it out. You may ask yourself, what's the name of this song? Like, it's Zeppelin, just from the casual fan. But
For a second, I thought you were going David Byrne there. You may ask yourself,
yeah,
whose riff is this?
Whose riff is this? Where did this come from? But this one,
Whose Mud Shark is this?
Everybody knows. And I mean, even my wife could probably pick out exactly who it is in terms of the band, just based on a few of the first notes of this song, right? It's just that good, and it's just that synonymous with Led Zeppelin at the end of the day. It showcases everything that is Led Zeppelin and his guitar specifically. That unaccompanied solo in the middle is just like unreal.
It's
so
incredible.
I'll let you this one because I know you've got a love affair with this, but it's just resonated, man, and it's impossible not to be just as pumped as Whole Lotta Love going into side two. I mean, that's the thought right there. And again, we talk about how easy it is to maneuver this journey now in 2025, but 1969. Second album, you've now shelled out a total of $6 to $8 on this band, and you get home and you flip over that album after what I would deem an incredible side A, and this is what you're met with on side B. I mean, again, dude, it's like just give me more. Like, where else can I go to get this fix? Because I'm gonna get through the next 5 tracks, I'm gonna be screwed because I can never rehear this again for the first time. That's like what Heartbreaker would do to me. I would love it, and I would simultaneously hate it because I would know that for the rest of the time I'm not going to be able to listen to it for the first time again.
This is
heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. Makes sense. Tracks. I mean, it is the best his guitar ever sounded. It's the best guitar tone he ever got. For Jimmy Page, who was a master in the studio, I just don't think, and you said it, Emily, she would listen to 5 seconds of it, she would recognize it. You could give me 0.2 seconds of just that opening bended G. Boom. Oh, that's Heartbreaker. It is indelible. It is, I would agree with you, one of those things where you listen the first time and you know you're listening to something that is an earworm of a guitar riff that will forever be in your head. Now, the rest of the song, talk about dynamics. You mentioned that with Robert Plant, and I think we were talking about a Whole Lotta Love, they do a really good job of not stepping on Robert. When his vocals come in, they give him space. And this song is the ultimate example of that. They get to the verse, and it's all bass and drums, excuse me. The bass has this really cool overdriven tone to it. And I was listening today in the car on the way back from school and thinking, man, there's a lot of meat on this bass part. While the guitar in the verses is just doing down, bow, bow. That's all the guitar is doing. A lot of space. Then we get after 2 verses and people talking all around. Now we got the key change. By the way, you left me flat. And then they go up again. All when I do have on my mind, you can clarify these two. And then they're just going and going. They accelerate, and then they just drop. Guitar solo, which could be so pretentious and so Spinal Tappy, playing it with the violin instead of the violin bow. No, instead, it's tasteful. And then when they launch back in, you have a freak out that is worthy of anything on Dazed and Confused. And then you bring it back home with one more trip through the riff and one more verse. And it really is, for a song that is just a clip over 4 minutes, a journey. And a fun one. And really kind of the birth, along with Whole Lotta Love, I think, of what would be considered riff rock. Single note riffs, repeated over and over and over, that really are the hooks of the song. Because think about this, Ben. What's the vocal hook of Whole Lotta Love? Want a whole lot of love? That's the vocal hook.
Right.
What's the vocal hook of Heartbreaker? Go away, you heartbreaker. That's the vocal hook. I've heard better. It's the riff. That's the hook.
It is the riff. I mean, I got to take the quote that I read this last week from Rick Rubin, magical in its awkwardness. I mean, 46-second solo just plopped right there. And another tidbit about, an interesting takeaway from this song is that uh, Eddie Van Halen was open about saying that this song is what inspired him to adopt the tapping technique,
Mm-hmm.
which was, in my opinion, I did not know that because it was made most popular by the legend that is Eddie Van Halen. So um, it's just crazy to think about what that song did to rock and roll, how it's resonated over the years, um, what it's done, and where it sits. I mean, it's just incredible. And again, you put it song one on side B, it's like just incredible. I mean, it is. I don't know what other way to put it. It's to me, side B intro is, I mean, you look at historic albums across the board, there are pretty much great opening tracks on every side of each album. That's fine, fair. But also, it's them kind of saying, like, hey, like, we've got a lot of good shit. And again, for the 100th time during these first two podcasts, just hang on and settle in, right? It's not over.
Side B openers: Heartbreaker, Misty Mountain Hop. Gun to the head again. Because I love both, but
Shit.
I'm going Misty as much as I love Heartbreaker.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I've got to go Misty too, and that's not following you in suit. That's just a personal accolade of mine for.
That's how good both of them are.
Both are great, but yeah, notoriously, man, this song is just a no-brainer. And again, I mean, what came next? What comes behind it? Doing exactly what I promised I wouldn't do, which is just looking at the overall amplification of the song and how it's stuck over time. I mean, I think I read in somewhere along the way that it was like number 320 or so in Rolling Stones magazine, like 500 greatest songs of all time.
Wow.
Greatest of all time. So like not
Greatest
just rock,
hook or riff of all time?
greatest songs of all time.
Okay.
Yeah. So um, if that gives you any indication, I mean, there's a whole hell of a lot of really great songs in the history of the world, and this is snuggled right in there in the first 500 according to Rolling Stone. But nonetheless, love it. Can't get enough of it whenever I throw it on, and it's just another one of those examples of wondering how the hell these guys, amidst doing everything else they were doing at the time, came in. And you can tell too, Mike. I mean, you and I have been there, right? But for the listener, they may not fully grasp sometimes how these things are born. Most songs that are riff heavy like this was like, and I'll bring them up again. Joe Walsh admits it all the time. Most of these songs that are heavy handed in just a normal riff are like warm up riffs that these guys wrote to just get their chops going before they would walk in. Brilliance and magic comes from whenever the rest of the band accidentally stumbles behind their instrument as the guitar player is warming up and then starts to build around it. So to me, that's what happened here. Like in my world, in my brain, like Jimmy was just fumbling around his warm-ups and something cool that he wrote, and they just went in on it, and lightning struck again, and here we are, right? Heartbreaker. So the lyrics are just too simple and shit, man. These guys were throwing shit at the wall, and it was sticking, but like the riff was the foundation, and they built up from it, and it's just a telltale of where this song was, and I'm sure Jimmy was just like, also, here's my solo, and let's ride it. And I don't even know if that has anything to do with the placement on the album, like coming out with a 46-second guitar solo. If this would have been placed track one, may not have been the route that they wanted to take. I don't know. Again, a grand assumption here, but just something to think about.
I listened to it, like I said, on the way home from work today, and that guitar solo hit. It still hits. What a song. What a performance. All right, so classic rock radio back in the day. Maybe it was because they couldn't get the record off in time, and there was such a short breath in between these two songs, but whenever they played Heartbreaker, Livin' Lovin' Maid would come next. Now, Livin' Lovin' Maid, the B-side of the Whole Lotta Love single. Makes sense. This is a catchy song. It's a pop rock number with a good riff, recorded at Morgan Studios in London, June 1969, one of the last basic tracks recorded for this album. Livin' Lovin' Wreck. You talk about some of those early pressings that might have had, what was the terminology? Led Zeppelin Flying Again, or fly, The Only Way to Fly, something like that. Those early pressings that'd be worth a lot now.
Yeah, no, sorry. Now I've lost my.
Well,
note.
that's okay, because I'm assuming some of these same ones would have had it listed as Livin' Lovin' Wreck. So some early pressings that listed as such are worth a lot of money. This is, Ben, Jimmy Page's least favorite Led Zeppelin song.
Wow.
The song is about a groupie who stalked the band early in their career, who Jimmy described as, quote, a degenerate old woman trying desperately to be young. Now, no offense to Jimmy, one of my musical idols. He did fancy younger gals. Laurie Maddox, for example, his long-time American girlfriend, met when she was 15. So maybe this degenerate old woman was 20. We don't know. But regardless, Jimmy didn't like it. They never played it live. I got to say, though, it's a tight little song. It's got a good riff. Robert delivers the kind of silly lyrics with conviction. It's got a tasty solo. And it's got hooks, vocal hooks. So I think as a song, there's some stuff here. It's fun.
Yeah, The Only Way to Fly, by the way.
Only Way to Fly. I love that.
Into that mental fart there without catching myself. Two things here. Number one, 2 minutes and 39 seconds?
Yeah.
Like, this falls into the category that we talked about in the first pod, which is some songs to me are, I've been cursed with it, and they're notoriously short, and I don't know why. Like, I want more. I just want a little more. Even if it's just another verse and a chorus, man, just like give me a little bit more of this. This falls into that category. I personally love this song. It also makes me wonder if Cameron Crowe plucked any of that storyline out for the infamous Miss Penny Lane and the storyline there, because her true age in the movie, if you read into that scene enough where her and William are going back and forth about it sounds better. Hey, man, it sounds better. It's cooler. She's 15, so who knows? Maybe that was a bit of a muse for Mr. Cameron Crowe in that moment.
I like this song and its placement on side B. I like the playfulness of it. I mentioned Lemon Song. I think Lemon Song and Livin' Lovin' Maid are the most carefree tracks on this album. And they bring a little bit of lightness to the proceedings. I cannot proclaim Livin' Lovin' Maid to be a favorite. But just as a song and a performance, it's well done. And if it's a throwaway track, it's a good throwaway track. I mean, so that I think is the sign of a classic album, when even the so-called filler songs are really good. Now, we're 2 songs into side B. Okay. I don't think any song from the minute it was released to present day have grown in the stature the way that Ramble On has for Led Zeppelin in their catalog. It is certifiably a Led Zeppelin classic. They never played it live, not once. Now, they could have tried, because the thing is, Stairway to Heaven was an acoustic to an electric song. Jimmy could have played it, as he did with Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, as he did at the '07 reunion tour, on an electric and just went from a clean to distorted channel. Could have done it. They didn't. So what was it that precluded them from playing this classic in their entire original lineup? That blows the mind.
Yeah, no, well, took the words out of my mouth. I mean, that's mind-blowing. Who knows, man? I mean, what a weird fact in lore, and what underlying backstory exists that keeps them or kept them from bringing that one out. Like, I don't understand it.
To give you an example, When the Levee Breaks was tried once. It didn't work live. I can see that, because that song is a studio masterpiece, and you were not going to recreate Bonham's drum sound. It's really not distortion heavy at all, which Jimmy had to be live. So I understand why that might have fallen flat live.
I have heard it live.
It's not bad.
I've heard it live. I love it live. Foo Fighters, Wembley.
Oh, they did When the Levee. Oh no, Ramble On.
With Jimmy
and John Paul. Right?
Fucking incredible, dude. Yeah, JPJ. That's insane. Like, I wonder why.
So Ramble On over the years, and I mean, it was a classic rock staple. WGKC, again, for us, that was a classic rock station in Champaign-Urbana. And before I even bought Led Zeppelin II, I knew Whole Lotta Love, I knew Ramble On, I knew Heartbreaker, and Live and Love and Maid. So really, most of what I knew was side B. I think that this run here on side B, it's rather relentless, probably because of the song times, but also the fact that Heartbreaker and Ramble On are certifiable classics. So this song, despite the Hobbit lyrics, which we could point and laugh at if we wanted to, but here's the thing and why it works, I think. We saw Becoming Led Zeppelin, not together but separately. The most emotional moment I had in that documentary, and when I saw it with my dad, he emoted, oh wow, was when Robert held from a hotel notepad the original lyrics to Ramble On. And goddamn if I didn't feel that little, like in the back of my throat thing. That song, Tolkien, not Tolkien, it looks like Tolkien. Tolkien, Hobbit references, all that. It cuts to the core of a fundamental human desire to achieve something, to go somewhere, to do things, to ramble on. And yes, he uses imagery from Lord of the Rings. You know what? It works for this song. And when I saw him pull that out, it really just punched me in the gut. This is a song that means so much to so many people, and it's musically brilliant. It is vocally one of Robert's best. John Paul Jones' bass line, by the way, is the lead instrument. That's the riff.
Yeah, man. I echo your love for this song and sentiments almost to a T. Like, I'll take another route, though, to paint the picture. As I often do, the emotional attachment to this song is far from Lord of the Rings. I did not get into any of that side of art until I was much older.
Yeah.
Unlike our friend Danny, where he could pull out any fact from just about any sci-fi movie you would want. I was on the other side of listening to this song, and let me just read these lyrics to you real quick, and then I'm going to ask you for a time frame of year in 217, Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, and you let me know what time of year that is, and it's a time of year that you and I both love. Leaves are falling all around you. It's time I was on my way. Thanks to you, I'm much obliged for such a pleasant stay. What time of year is it? What are we doing?
It's fall. Tailgate?
Yes, dude. So to me, I am basically
transported.
Yeah, it's insane, man. It's like I feel it. I can smell the streets. I can feel the crisp air. I can feel the good times. I can feel the buzz in the air, right? And this song delivered that thought-provoking sense to me for home and, one of my favorite times of year, every year. And then just also in the same tip, like as you're growing older and you're a guy and you're listening to Robert Plant deliver these lyrics, it's like, you can do anything, you can go anywhere. Like, it's time I was on my way, ramble on. Like, it's like almost a victory chant, if you will, pre-victory. Like, it's like, get out there and just do. And I don't know, man. This song, I would find it hard-pressed to believe that anybody hasn't at some time in their life found inspiration or at least some fucking energy from listening to this one. Guy or girl, or any of the above. It's just one of those things. It's like powerful in so many ways. And again, you're right. In that documentary, when he pulled that out, I was with Keith Johnson at the theater, IMAX, and I grabbed his arm, dude. I was like, I don't know. There's something about that moment and seeing just the original lyrics.
God, man. Yeah, it really hit me hard.
His eyes sort of glaze over too. I mean, it's got to be important to him because it would be one of those moments that I do want to address here because it's a perfect moment for it. These guys weren't going into these songs. I can't imagine. I mean, I know they do have egos. Like, that's not a secret. But they weren't going into these type of things in those moments knowing the longevity and impact that these things would have. So for him to then pull out that piece of paper that he may have done for the first time, knowing that he was actually sitting down for, that type of interview and for that type of film, to look at it. Just think about how you feel whenever you pull out like a newspaper clipping from Urbana High School that you were a part of, or, a yearbook segment or something like that you put work into, but you haven't looked at for 20 years. And then times that by like 2, and for a song that has literally stood the test of time and is just so impactful to so many, it's like just a cool moment. And I got literally like chill bumps on the back of my neck. My hair stood on end, and I was like, geez, like that's when becoming Led Zeppelin really just like hit for me, in that moment too, watching that and just it being with this song, and knowing that his takeaways in the moment was like I was writing lyrics for a song that we wrote. Like, again, because he wasn't, you're not trying to stop the world.
No.
Like, make the full impact in this one moment, but then you do, and you look back on it, and you probably can't help but realize, like, how cool it was. And probably that's why it's cool, because it was treated like any other process writing segment that they did, and it just was a magical moment. So
leaves are falling all around. It's time I was on my way. Thanks to you, I'm much obliged. Such a pleasant stay. But now it's time for me to go. The full moon lights my way, and now I smell the rain, and with the pain, and it's heading my way. It's just simple imagery, but it works. The Hobbit stuff doesn't come until later, and even then, Gollum, the evil one, crept up and slipped away with her. But to me, what was beautiful about the song is that it is probably about just moving on. It's about lost love. It's about growing through struggle and pain. And this is a young guy that's got his heart broken, probably broken a few farts, a few hearts himself. One lyric that really stands out to me in this: "Got no time for spreading roots. The time has come to be gone. And through our health be drank 1,000 times. It's time to ramble on." But that part, got no time for spreading roots. It's the idea of a rolling stone gathers no moss. I got to keep moving. This guy's been on the road for a year. He is living that life as a young man. And it just really cuts to the core of why the rock and roll ethos and the idea of just hitting the road, which is a very it's a universal thing, but also this, I think, speaks to the fact that they were in America for as long as they were at this point, playing all these American gigs. That is an American thing, man. Hit the open road. There's a reason this album really hit with American audiences, and I think the lyrics to Ramble On are a big reason why. It just cuts to the core of rock and roll. Got to keep moving. How many rock and roll songs have been written about that very theme? Keep on moving.
And I also sort of looked at this in my interpretation as a subtle but very powerful thank you to Jimmy and the band, if that makes sense, because it was notorious that Robert was a vagabond, right? Like, he was a wandering soul. Like, he'd left his family behind, had some torrential relationships that put him in the position that he was to join Led Zeppelin and be a part of the band. And there's that line, it's, "I'm on my way. I've been this way 10 years to the day. I'm going to ramble on." And it's like, I read into it as this is now his life. And he's sort of found it, and it's like, if you don't get the sense from the song, then watch Becoming Led Zeppelin, because to me, he still seems like a wandering soul. Does he not?
No,
like,
dude,
still to this day. Sitting down in the chair, he still seems like he is doing exactly what this song entails.
He's not married. He's still touring with this band called Saving Grace, playing smaller venues. The guy doesn't need to do shit the rest of his life. And he's saying, you know what? No, I want to go to Denmark. I want to go to Norway. I want to go to Germany. I want to go all the way around the world and play with this little band in front of 4,000 people. I'd rather be doing that than stay at home. So it is The Wandering Spirit. It's a classic. I mean, what a song. Moby Dick. All right. Mystic Studios, Los Angeles, May 1969, so kind of in the middle of the process. More work done at a couple other studios after that. Now, at first, John Bonham's drum showcase was called Pat's Delight. Pat, Patricia, his wife. Pat's Delight had a different riff early on. If you listen to early Zeppelin recordings in 1969, the riff was like, down, 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 down. It was just this really simple riff that allowed John to kind of do some cool fills and stuff. Now, this riff came from something that you can hear on BBC sessions. There was a song called The Girl I Love, then parenthetical title, She Got Long Black Wavy Hair. And that riff is in E, and it goes boom, boom, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da, boom, boom, ba-da-da-da. Okay, that's the riff. The whole song, it's a 12-bar blues. Jimmy detuned down to drop D. Boom, bum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So it is derived from that riff. But boy, if that riff is not as good as any Jimmy riff, the drop D just adds this cool extra, like deep down in your plums. And I will say this. I love John Bonham. He's my favorite drummer of all time. Just full stop. This is not a great drum solo. It lacks a lot of what his live solos would have. And then later on, his live solos went entirely too long, but that's a whole other thing. But you can watch his drum solo, Royal Albert Hall, on the Led Zeppelin DVD. That's unbelievable shit. This is rather limp, but the riff is so good, and there's enough of a crescendo at the end of his drum solo where Moby Dick is a flawed classic, if you will. I mean, it's Moby Dick. It's Led Zeppelin. It's Moby Dick. The title, the riff, it's big sounding. It's got a big title and the biggest drummer in rock history at the center of it. So in that regard, I think it works exactly as it should.
Yeah, no. You got to address it. You have to talk about it. In some ways, I think you hit the nail on the head early on in our segment here, which is every member of the band got theirs during this album. So I would venture to say that it doesn't matter in what format it came in. I don't think just knowing the few interviews that John Bonham had in his entire career, but just knowing kind of the type of reserved guy he was, both behind the scenes, definitely not behind the drum kit, would be to put an entire track dedicated to his solo on an album. But I have an opinion that the rest of the band knew sort of the longevity of what this track would become and how it would resonate with fans across the board. And when you and I have played it, man, we would warm up to this in practice in the attic at your parents' house often. It's just a fun jam to kind of encapsulate, getting going. And I love where it comes from. I will get to, obviously, when we go track by track in our rankings, get there. But yeah, I just, it's interesting. I guess it's peculiar in its own right. But I think, again, to go back to what I've kind of constantly said through our first pod and this one, is that track by track, you're listening to the album at home and you get to this one. I mean, come on, dude. Are you not going to enjoy a full John Bonham experience in your room as you're listening to it and it's just hitting the floor and you're, enjoying yourself, or you have the headphones on? Like, incredible experience. I think it's one nowadays with the ease of music streaming and everything like that, where you could glaze over it because you sort of know, like, hey, I've heard Moby Dick once. I will hear it again. Maybe hungry for the full band at this point, but it's great. Like, it's great, and I think for the moment and the record and its placement on side 2, that it just works for what it is. So
yeah, for what it is. And I think that live, you can hear on How the West Was Won, a really good Moby Dick, where it's weird. The riff stops, and then he launches in, and the key difference to me is that when he did it live, often the first thing he did on drums was the left foot would be, and he'd just be like, just frenetic. This one, there's like a full stop, and he does the hand drums pretty early on, and it just doesn't quite come across the drum solo part of it, but the riff is so good that you can withstand a 2-minute, 15-second drum solo, whatever it is, in order to get back to that riff. Leading into, this is the only time on this album that does that really hard kind of cut between songs. Moby Dick has that sort of bam, ba-dum, ba-da-boom, bam, ba-dum, ba-da-ba-dum, bam, and then before it could even fade out, okay, and we got Blues Song, Bring It On Home. The first minute got some criticism
Really
Robert,
quick,
yeah,
I don't. I just do want to address what you briefly did there before we move on from Moby Dick. Would be seeing these guys live and not 100% sure if you were going to get a 6 to 8 minute Moby Dick or a 30 minute. Moby Dick. Um, I just know, man, and we got to call a spade a spade. Like we're Dave Matthews fans. We've sat through some interesting things over the years. Um, I love Carter Beauford to death. I don't necessarily know if I could ingest a 30-minute drum solo while the band left the stage and we're just there waiting for when it is going to wrap up. As incredible of an artist as he is, and how monumental that would ultimately be. If you saw one time, you'd be like, I mean, I was there for that. That's your merit badge that you get as the takeaway. But I just think it's interesting to know that it was like all over the place. Was it the level of where the band was at that time? And they were like,
oh,
you out at Bonzo, do your thing, or he would just take off, and when he landed, they joined him again. I just think it's intriguing. So
listen, that is 70s rock excess. It
Sure.
is. And a precursor. It was 1969 when this happened, when they recorded this, and then by the end of the 70s, the 77 tour, they replaced the Moby Dick intro with Out on the Tiles instrumental to go into the drum solo, and ended, I believe, with a Moby Dick riff, and they call that Over the Top as the whole thing, and it was about a 30-minute drum solo. And that is ludicrous. It just is. So, and it's okay to say that. Like, Zeppelin is my favorite band of all time. Yet there are aspects of them where I'm like, oh Jesus Christ! Like, and this is why taking the piss out of them, like Spinal Tap and other things may have, is totally fine. Leading to Bring It On Home, which begins with a 1.5-minute long vamp with Robert Plant impersonating a black bluesman with no teeth.
It's interesting.
It is. It's a choice.
It is a choice. It is one, again, on this album where I feel like if you fast forwarded, not that I would, I think it's brilliant in its own right, especially whenever you get used to the track and you know it's coming. But like a fresh listen again, without visiting Bring It On Home for some time, you get to, what is it, the 2-minute 26 mark or something like that. And then it's, oh, right, this is what they get into during this track. It's interesting, man. And also, I think for the fourth time on this pod, we mentioned Spinal Tap. It's impossible for me not to see the track listing and not think about All the Way Home.
Oh, I see my baby going down the track, all the way home,
But
all the way home, all the way home, all the way home.
the intro is just like, okay. Again, fly on the wall, man. Like, what was going on? And sometimes you hear songs. Like, I am annoyed at the short-lived song that is Live and Love and Maid because I want more of it. Out on the Tiles is another, 2-minute something song.
I'm annoyed with how short the electric part is in this one.
Dude. Me too, because it's like you get to it, and just as soon as it starts, not only does it end, but also the album ends. So you're like, I think there's rhyme and reason behind it all. I think that it's like, I know exactly what this MFer is going to do. He's going to flip this album back over and he's going to start it all over again because we're going to leave and wondering what the fuck just happened. And again, what comes next? I mean, it's just, it's incredible. But I'm left thinking the exact same thing, man. They get into the electric part and I'm like, more, just a little bit more. Like if you gave me an extra 60 seconds, I'm probably like a fully happy camper, but I don't know what that would be like. So
this side of the album has 3 all-time riffs: Heartbreaker, Moby Dick, Bring It On Home. They're all instantly recognizable. They are the template for single-note rock riffs. I'm not talking riffs can be chord-based, they can be single-note. There are songs on Led Zeppelin 1, how many more times is a single-note riff? Boom, bow, da, down, down. You can hum it. Communication Breakdown and Good Times, Bad Times, those are riffs, but those are chords. Bam, bam. Or na 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 bam, bam, bam. Okay, what the leap was for Led Zeppelin II was that so many of these songs were based in single-note riffs that were just tasty. And Bring It On Home is just an all-time riff. And the song, I don't even know how good the song is. I don't know. The verse is whatever. Just give me back to the riff. And they always get you back to the riff. And you're like, oh, there it is. And then I got to give John Paul Jones one more bit of credit here. He's not always playing in unison with the riff on Bring It On Home. There's one really cool lick where he starts up and goes doom 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 doom, and then he ends in that low E or something, and I don't even know what it is. Similar to at the end of When the Levee Breaks, he goes down finally. 7 minutes, he finally goes down to low octave, and you feel it in that subwoofer. He does that at one point and Bring It On Home. It's a cool track. It's goofy. The first minute and 30 seconds are goofy, but then the riff hits and you're like, oh, okay, this is Led Zeppelin claiming the crown of the hard rock band, and they will never be topped, and they never have been in terms of that. This album did so much to solidify that, and that 9-track behemoth is why they became the number one band in the world. After the Beatles were done and the Rolling Stones were still the Stones, but were kind of celebrities as much as they were rock musicians.
Indeed. Just to tie up Bring It On Home, it is not part of our awards takeaway ceremony that we will have here shortly, but I did find a note during my listens that I had to revisit here as we're talking about is went a little walk downtown, messed and got back late, found a note there waiting. It said, "Daddy, I just can't wait." Bring it on home. Bring it on home. It's like,
love it.
I during the listen, I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. Like, Robert, you simple but dirty motherfucker. Like, he just delivers. And in these moments, like I said, they weren't going into these things overthinking any of this, which I think is just part of the magic and the overall essence of what they ended up being. But incredible, man, because I mean, like, they were taking their direct experiences, in my opinion, of what was happening to them as they were touring, as they were doing things. And he probably had to put this shit to work right away because these guys were producing. Instrumentals were coming, right? And so I can see literally this happening as he's on his way back, maybe to where he has to go lay down these lyrics. And he's like, went on a little walk downtown, messed and got back late, found a note there waiting. It said, "Daddy, I just can't wait."
He delivers it so good.
I mean, come on, dude. It's just, oh, yeah. So another 9-track banger, top to bottom, some peculiar takeaways. Like, I'll be fair here. I will take Moby Dick all day. I think at the end of everything, in hindsight, you leave everything where it's at because it's part of the whole magic and the allure of what we now know as Legendary and Bonzo and so forth. But in the moment, direct takeaway, 1 through 9, you think maybe that would be something cool to see, like, on YouTube now so many years later, that who knows, like, maybe there was another track that they were keeping in the pocket that never saw the light.
There were, and the ones that I had sent to you, one is called Sugar Mama, which you hear on Becoming Led Zeppelin, which is a very kind of basic rock track, and it was not better than anything on this album. And then there was one instrumental take, and I think it was called, not Ooh La La, but La La. That was all it was called. Organ-based track that was kind of goofy and poppy. That was all in terms of outtakes for this one. This was the Divine 9, whatever you want to call it. This was it. I mean, this was no doubt what the track listing would be.
La La, that's a nice shout out to Ronnie Wood there.
Ronnie Wood. Ooh La La is a great track. Now, do we go to the categories or just knock out reception real quick?
Reception. Yeah, let's go with reception.
What album, Ben, you know this because we have a little game coming up at the end of this. What album did it knock out of number 1 spot on the Billboard charts?
That would be the Beatles.
Abbey Road. Led Zeppelin, number 1 with a bullet on its first week of release. Okay, now we talked last week about how some of these reviews for Led Zeppelin 1 were mixed. John Mendelsohn was the one who wrote the scathing review in Rolling Stone. This was his review of Led Zeppelin II in Rolling Stone. Hey, man, I take it all back. This is one fucking heavyweight of an album. Who can deny that Jimmy Page is the absolute number 1 heaviest white blues guitarist between 5'4" and 5'8" in the world? Until you've listened to the album 800 times, as I have, it seems as if it's just one especially heavy song over the space of 2 whole sides. He didn't like Led Zeppelin II, and he still, to this day, is pretty steadfast in that fact. What John Mendelsohn ended up doing, he was a rock critic for much of his life. He wrote a biography of the Kinks. I like the Kinks. They're fun. But that just gives you an idea that he adores the Kinks. He abhors Led Zeppelin. And I'm kind of not on that wavelength. So, hey, different strokes for different folks. One other rock critic, Robert Christgau. He is still around. He's in his 80s now. He's considered the dean of rock critics. He initially was a little bit of a cynic about Led Zeppelin. Around Led Zeppelin II, he said the best of the wah-wah mannerist groups, so dirty they drool on demand. But he did change his tune the following year after listening to Led Zeppelin III. He said, Led Zeppelin simply out-heavied everyone, pitting Jimmy Page's repeated low-register fuzz riffs against the untiring freak intensity of Robert Plant's vocal. This trademark has only emerged clearly on the second album, and more I am coming to understand it as an artistic triumph. To date, in America, Ben, how many copies of Led Zeppelin II has been sold?
I don't even know where to begin on that one, man.
It is, along with Led Zeppelin IV, Diamond certified, which means 10 million plus albums sold. They have sold 12 million copies of Led Zeppelin II in America.
Wow.
Let me just check Led Zeppelin Physical Graffiti, because that's a double album. Physical Graffiti albums sold in America. Come on, AI, help me out here. Okay, that's 16 times platinum, but the difference is that means 8 million copies of that album in total were sold. So Led Zeppelin II is the second best-selling Led Zeppelin album, which leads us to, I believe, our categories for today.
Category time. You know, I just was kind of letting what you said sink into, and I'm thinking that first rock critic, was it John
Mendelsohn?
Yeah. I'm taking this assumption based on Almost Famous, right? But you write something like that for a band that ultimately at that point hit the ground and started touring nonstop. Comes off as if this guy was never invited back in. Didn't quite get to the fold, didn't get into the dressing room and get to address that first take head on, if you will. And maybe has had a lifelong angst resonate from that level. I mean,
yeah.
I think I agree with you. I mean, to each their own, and some folks take away some of the more indie acts and things like that. But I just can't imagine being a rock critic writing for Rolling Stone during this time and not come at it from just you don't even need to like the music, man. It's just like, this is
different,
something monumental that's happening. And you don't have to get on the train, but you kind of have to let it be known that that's one of the loudest trains and one of the fullest trains that you've seen pass by, right? I mean, so I don't know.
Listen,
just interesting.
I don't like the Eagles, but the songs are pretty incredible. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I acknowledge it. I know why people like them. Their harmonies are exquisite, and the songs are really good, and the production is there's a nice polish to it. I don't love Steely Dan, but I get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's incredible musicianship. So I think there is something to that where he could say, listen, it's battering me over the head a bit too much, but they're really good at that. Now, here are the categories that we did last week for Led Zeppelin 1. We'll do again this week. Killer line, which is a mix of not just the lyric, but the delivery. So the killer line is, in our opinion, what is the best delivered line from Robert Plant. Alternative album title. If it weren't Led Zeppelin II, what could it have been called? The MVP of the album, the single band member who had the biggest impact. Side A or Side B. Dustiest Crumpet, which is the worst song, in our opinion, or least favorite, however you want to put it. And then Spiciest Biscuit, which is either our favorite / best. It's kind of a mix of the two. So, last week, Ben, you started Killer Line. You gave that first with Babe, the first Babe from Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. Do you want me to start Killer Line?
Sure. Yeah. Go for it.
All right. It's not even necessarily Robert's line, but it embodies a confidence in this album, and I think overall playfulness that Led Zeppelin 1 lacks. The way you squeeze my lemon, I'm going to fall right out of bed. It's a blues standard, but the way he delivers it and the time on side A, 15 minutes into that side, where it's like, listen, we're Led frickin' Zeppelin. I can get away with this. It's almost like testing the listener to see, are you going to laugh at this or think that's kind of badass? Well, Robert, we're going to think it's kind of badass because you sound amazing and you somehow deliver this line with just the right amount of panache where we say, okay, you're the dude. So the way you squeeze my lemon, I'm going to fall right out of bed. It's not profound, but it hits where it needs to.
I love that. And again, I implore the listeners to go to Reddit and search through the threads that discuss the meaning of that song, because I think it'll influence your pick even further, Mike. It's great. Mine is just a little bit more deep in a sense of takeaway. I couldn't let myself go past this and not write it down. The Babe just resonated for me from album one. It was like that first moment where I felt that I got a taste of Robert Plant. It was like, oh, like, what was that? And to play a moment of a song back over and over again when it's literally one word, to me was like, shit, that's it, right? This one, far more poetic, right? But it's still just what it is for me on this album. For now, I smell the rain, and with it pain, and it's heading my way. It's like when he delivers that line, I'm like, fuck, like, come on, man. And yet again, something that I can just take a snippet of that song and I'm like, yeah, I'm right there.
The delivery of that line, for now I smell the rain and with it pain and it's headed my way. It is awesome delivery. With a pretty cool lyric, trouble's a brewing, so I got to get moving, right? But the way he delivers it really sells it.
Yep. And I also think that just the takeaway from becoming Led Zeppelin and ultimately what Ramble On became is why it probably sticks with me, because it's just right there, and it's a magical moment for a band that was struck by lightning, and I think that's yet another moment that they were again struck by lightning, and specifically Robert struck by lightning, and those lyrics coming to him. So loved that, and couldn't let it escape me for this time through. So
I like the pick. Now, last week, I believe I did alternative album title first. So you lead the way here with your alternative title for Led Zeppelin II.
Yeah, and right, interestingly enough, there was already two. The Only Way to Fly and Now Flying. I think it was just a testament to the fact that I think your alternative album from last week was Crash Landing. In a way, it's like, here we are. This is us. The Only Way to Fly and Now Flying, I think, meant that they were doing the damn thing. My alternative album title is Here to Stay. Subtle, but impactful. It's like, if you didn't think that we were
legit,
now we are. And also, by the way, we dropped this album in the same fiscal year as our first, and we're touring. So mostly to the U.S. because the U.S. album release was first, and they were touring at the time. So I think all things considered, I was like, Here to Stay would be fitting for the fact that they are, and they were. So,
all right. So I have two. I want you to vote. Yeah, I do. I want to hear which one you think is better. The first one is Over America. Now, this is inspired by a Wings live album, Wings Over America. It was a triple LP set. And it was just Paul McCartney and Wings toured America. They released a live album. It was a big seller. And I thought, well, this album was mostly recorded in America. I know that Whole Lotta Love and What Is and What Should Never Be were not. I think Thank You, maybe not, regardless. But this was an album recorded mostly in the midst of an American tour. So Led Zeppelin, Over America. And you have the Zeppelin on the cover. You have these militaristic-looking figures at the bottom of it. But then I thought, okay, those aren't American military figures. So we got German bombers from World War I, right?
Correct.
My second alternative album title is simply Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg. They blitzed you with their music. It's sensory overload. It matches the military uniforms, the Zeppelin silhouette on the cover, the brown and white. It's sepia-toned. Blitzkrieg elicits World War I, World War II, German bombardiers. So that was the other one that I came up with.
I like that. And much like Here to Stay, I think you're right. And it just occurred to me, yet again, we're looking through this from a lens of 2025, where we're acting as if the marketability and the notoriety behind this band at this time frame, with album number 2 coming out, would have been something that was like household. It was not. You had to be sort of in the know, going by the record shop, passing by the record shop windows, listening to the radio on the regular to know that they were anticipating a second album coming out. Can you imagine, though, popping into your favorite record store and you see, holy shit, they dropped another album? Like, so I love Blitzkrieg because it's like, hey, surprise, we dropped one on you. Here's 2. And you get home and you throw that bad boy on, and this is what you get. I think that's a perfect analogy, especially the Blitz, of what was to come and what you experienced. So I love that.
I'll go Blitzkrieg for that. Now, I will start with MVP so I can give you the floor.
Go ahead.
I am sticking rather simple and obvious here. I'm still going Jimmy for Led Zeppelin II. It was the Herculean effort to tie this thing together production-wise. It was the guitar riffs that he came up with that make me think, you know what? This is more of a band effort. All 4 band members are highlighted in a way even more so than Led Zeppelin 1, but it is still very much a Jimmy Page vision. So, I will go with Jimmy Page. What say you?
Yeah, probably no surprise at all. But I do love that. And man, I will tell you, it was a bit difficult not to, again, give him his place here. I knew you would do that. I always had a soft spot in my heart for the way that you would handle our recordings, how you handle your pod recordings. Shout out to the 200 level, Illinois Sports Podcast. But seriously though, I mean, you go to the lab and you get it going, and it's not like you don't have a million other things going on, man. You still release those pods and still would get music cooking for us back in the day with Maid and Civilian and your band now, where you're still cutting tracks and you're still doing the recording process despite being a teacher and having gigs and traveling and going to see music and going to games and stuff. So the soft spot in my heart was reading the backstory of how all this came to fruition, as they are literally taking the bull by the horns. And you know for a fact that he was also the guy that was probably hand in hand in all the conversations about what venues they were playing, when, what time they would go on, what the riders were going to be. I mean, Jimmy is just that guy. He is literally you, in the form of, this person in 1969 that was leading this band to what they were going to be. However, I had to not take such a macro side of what this album became. I took a micro version, which is the person that is splattered all over this album like a Jackson Pollock. Shout out to Ian Sloan. John Paul Jones.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely incredible. You cannot not hear him on this album. And in my opinion, it's the coming out party for not only him, but also bass players, like from that moment on. There's a lot of tunes over the years, jazz, blues, that came long before this, where you can surely pull it out. But I mean, to go into this in the typical frame of what 1969 was, with other artists out there, and I've already mentioned a few: Procol Harum, the Guess Who, the Stones. I mean, there's just so many. The Beatles now is one where you definitely can pick out a lot of bass. It just is what it is, right? Yeah. Paul's amazing, but nonetheless, this was a moment where every track you're just kind of like waiting for him to quote unquote go away, meaning like he was already all over the track before. There's no possibility they're going to get even more. And he just continues to go in. And I'm a sucker for like walking and pockets and octaves, man. If you're hitting like high octaves and then implementing it with deep E's and D's, I am an absolute sucker for that. And it's what I formulated my style from. So this album answers to that. And I think he sort of is the epitome of the MVP that is from track 1 all the way to track 9, you can find them, and you can find them all. But I just think that I had to give notoriety to where it is due in the fact that he sort of executed and also played his part in saying, like, you need for me to be a little tastier here on this album. I need to fill a little bit more space given what is in front of us, what these tracks are, and mission accomplished, man, because he just knocked it out of the park. So
It is a great pick. He is so good on this album and really is the driving force behind Ramble On. That's the riff. Whole Lotta Love, the riff is made much, much bigger by him. Lemon Song is a showcase, but really, I mean, God, the organ on Thank You, the fact that I really think that if you think of what is and what should never be, we didn't talk about his bass line on that. The verses in that song, the bass is going doom doo 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 doom doo 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 doom doo 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 boom.
Yep.
It's all over the goddamn place. So he's so good, and I'm glad he got his flowers. I will get him his flowers before the series is over, and I will. Every band member will be represented. I just went Jimmy for the first two. Side A, Side B. You went second last time with a hot take, if you will.
Yep.
For Side B of Led Zeppelin 1, you do the honors here. Side A or Side B of Led Zeppelin 2?
Yeah, thanks. So here's the interesting thing that I realize now on our second pod. Throughout the rankings, what I did for this one was as I ranked my tracks, next to the track, I wrote A or B, depending on its placement. I found, unless I go the other route in the future, that it was fair to then calculate the number of A tracks and number of B tracks that were present on my first 5 tunes and give the love to the side that made the top 5.
Okay.
So in this case, it was a close one. Just a little taste of what's to come in the rankings.
Good.
But 3-2, side A. 3-2, side A. And it'll make sense as we get to the overall rankings here.
Cool.
But that was pretty simple for me. And I think ultimately in my gut too, whenever it was just gun to the head saying side A or side B, that this one was full side A for me. And it wasn't, I do my rankings track by track. So it wasn't any correspondence to the way that ended up falling. And it was close. 3 tracks to 2. So
I like that approach. I am going with the more looking at the side as a whole and what works collectively. And even though it is funkier and weirder, this week I'm going side B. I don't love everything on side B. There's arguably filler on side B, and yet I find it to be infinitely re-listenable. Like just top to bottom, if I had 22 minutes and I know I got to go through the first 22 minutes of Led Zeppelin 2 or the second 22 minutes, gun to the head yet again, which is a very violent metaphor, I would go side B. Now, I have issues with it. I don't want to say anything more for fear of revealing some of the rankings I went with, but I'm going side B. Is that a hot take or not for this album?
No, given the fact of what some of the tracks are. Again, not to ruin what's to come, but no, it's not unfair. It's just interesting because given the time spent on listening to a side, not to hate on it, right? But you've got Moby Dick on side B.
Yeah.
It's fine. And what's interesting there is you're taking some of what side B has to offer, even given that. So I think that's fair. And I mean, here's the other thing. It's 9 tracks. So to be perfectly frank, I could also have taken the first 4 tracks and I'd be split in half, 50-50. So
Sure.
It's a tough one, man. It really is. As I'm sure was purposely formulated by this magical band. So that's awesome though, man. We finally did it. Unless of course our rankings come out like they did last week. We had some really differing opinions there, which I enjoy for the sake of our listeners and our outlook here on this band. So yeah, next is
Rankings.
And I'm going to let you fire away at this, man,
Okay.
because of the outcome of last week. If we're ever able to, and just to kind of address this for the listeners as you're getting into this, I'm kind of big on this as of late, as I'm sitting in the office, which is my home, or my office away from home, which is just another room where I get to work, I'll throw on a podcast, but I like to watch the video. I think Mike and I are going to slowly work on maybe getting some software where we can also upload that eventually as we move along
Yeah,
here.
yeah. We'll tinker with that.
As we get to it, you will see that, throughout the week as we're doing this process, we'll write down sort of our takeaways here. So this is probably something we should have addressed in the first one because it was just so crazy how we ended both on the same song. But I think it's pretty amazing here how we go through this. So I'm looking forward to this on you to go first, and I will let you take it away.
All right. I will start with my Dustiest Crumpet. Number 9 with a bullet. Not even close. And Ben, I've tried. I've tried so hard. I know some people love this song. Thank you. I can't do it. It never has resonated with me. I find it cheesy. I find it kind of flat for the fact that Robert Plant was banging his wife's sister the whole time and wrote a love song to his wife. And it's just kind of it is what Greta Van Fleet would think would be a good ballad. It's not. Sorry for those who like it. I dated a girl in college. Her parents' wedding song was "Thank You." Started with a C, that girl. Her parents' wedding song was "Thank You." And I'm just like, that's great. And I'm a Zeppelin fanatic. And I'm thinking, why? But listen.
That makes so much sense.
It means a lot to a lot of people. That's fine. It falls flat to me so hard. I've tried. 8. Livin' Lovin' Maid. Admittedly filler. It's still fun. I can enjoy it. Number 7. Only because the middle 2 minutes or whatever. But the riff is so good. Moby Dick. Number 6. Bring It On Home. Only because the middle 2.5 minutes with the riff are that freaking good. The bookend, beginning and outro, whatever. Number 5, What Is and What Should Never Be. Perhaps Low. It is a great song. I do not deny that. Is it always the one that I gravitate towards? No. But when it comes on, I love it. Number 4, The Lemon Song. Was tempted to put it higher, but I also recognize it's just kind of a blues rave up, and they do a great job with it. I find it fun. I go back to it more than What Is and What Should Never Be, so that's why I put it number 4. Number 3, Heartbreaker. Come on. It's fucking Heartbreaker. It's great. Number 2, Ramble On. I love Ramble On. It means a lot to me. Number 1, the older I get, the more I listen to it. Whole Lotta Love is perfect. As a studio cut, as a performance, as a riff, it is everything Zeppelin did that no other band could ever touch. You can cover Whole Lotta Love, and God knows we tried, and we did an admirable job for a little bar band. But no one is ever going to get that magic that Zeppelin got on that track. It is that freaking good. My spiciest biscuit, Whole Lotta Love.
Love it, man. So, some interesting takeaways there.
And by the way, side B, I said was my favorite. Notice, that is honestly as much of an indictment on Thank You.
Yep.
Thank You is my number 9. Guess what my 8, 7, and 6 were? Livin' Lovin' Maid, Moby Dick, and Bring It On Home. All on side B. And yet, I cannot give it to side A because I skip that side's closer. I don't want to listen to it. And that's after 3 amazing cuts. So I go in side B on that.
Absolutely. And totally fair. Here's something interesting. The only track that you and I had the same was 3. I'll get to this.
Okay.
But we did, however, have the exact same groupings of songs. 9 to 5 are the same, just misordered. And 1 through 4 are the same and misordered except for track 3. So I'll get to mine. I just thought that was unbelievably interesting that we sort of categorize them the exact same
I
way.
could see you were looking down as if to not give any emoting sort of expression.
By the way, I'm wearing my little Nero's pizza hat from Home Alone, so I was able to like tuck my face away underneath my cap brim as Mike was going through these. Okay, so track 9, and I will prove to the audience that's watching, aka Mike and I, that I had thank you, but I crossed it out because after the second or third listen is when I went back and made my final revision, and I also listed the album side next to these. I'm with you on thank you, man. It doesn't hit home for me. It falls just a little bit flat. It's no hate against the song itself because I will listen to it. I love Procol Harum. I love the Guess Who. Those are two bands that I sort of tied into my thought when I'm listening to this. But even that sort of put just a bit of a sour taste in my mouth because I was like, I just want Zeppelin at this point, right? Like, it's fine. But like, if I can hear resonations of other bands that are out at the exact same time, I'm sort of like, eh.
Imagine if Tangerine existed at this point.
Exactly.
And that replaces Thank You. We would have been okay with a palate cleanser that's a ballad.
Right.
It's just that Thank You is lame. Right. So that's all we're saying.
But nonetheless, Moby Dick took 9 for me. So I got to get that out there. It's nothing against Bonham. It's nothing against what the thought process was of giving him his time on this album, and what the overall essence of that song is. I mean, it is a song. It is his time, and he's incredible, right? One of the best to ever do it. To me, it's unfair. It's unfair to the other songs that I do listen to, like you. Thank you. You can gloss over it. To me, I can at this point gloss over Moby Dick, because I know it. I've got it. It's there. It's in the compartment that it needs to be, and I don't really yearn for it. Thank You coming in at number 8. Bring It On Home, 7.
Cool.
That it's a minute 44 in, okay, and it's just if that were the song at that point, it would probably be a little higher, but it takes a while to get there, and once it does get there, there's just not enough. Livin', Lovin', Maid, number 6, right? So you and I are like neck for neck in terms of our categorization of those 4 songs. 5, the Lemon Song.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of tough, man, because of what it means to me, why I even like ended up researching this album in any capacity was wholeheartedly just because of that song and Perry Hamilton, the reason that I was brought to that moment. So I felt bad sticking it right in the middle like a sandwich. But honestly, like I said, the title of the song and, unfortunately, the placement of where it is on this album with other songs that clearly rise above, to me, it was a pretty fair number 5. 4, Whole Lotta Love.
Whoa.
Yeah. So hear me out here. I understand. Okay. I know what it is. I love playing it more than you probably understand, but I know you do because you enjoy playing it too, both on the mic and the guitar and behind the drum kit. I just can't get past sort of what it is now and the radio play and just like how mainstream it did become.
Fair.
There was never a lack of it, right? So like it wasn't a new discovery for me. It was you gotta hop on and like enjoy, which is cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's high for me. Number 4, but Whole Lotta Love.
Okay.
3, Heartbreaker.
Mm-hmm.
Weird because like to me they could interchange a little bit. Like Whole Lotta Love could be any spot in the top 4, but Whole Lotta Love, Heartbreaker. This is where it gets tricky. And I went back and forth on this because if I don't know, My Funeral, man, like if for some reason the last song that everybody heard before they exited and went on to party and enjoy the day was Ramble On, I'd be a happy camper. However, Ramble On came in at number 2 for me.
Wow.
Which leaves What Is and What Should Never Be at
Love
1. And it is just so peculiar in just the right ways. It is the beverage you didn't know you needed, when you didn't realize that you needed it. It's the scratch of the itch that you couldn't feel yet. I mean, it's just like does something to me amongst all these other songs and this album where like I feel lucky that it's on here. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh shit, like this is a treat because this is like different than all the rest. It stands out in a good way. And it could also just easily get completely put on the back burner because of what else is awesome on this album. So I appreciate that, and sort of appreciate like the way that it swims upstream versus all the other ones. And it did it for me. So, but again, man, like we had just kind of categorized, but the same top and same bottom. So that was really interesting.
I
and
love
we also
that.
had completely diverse sides of the album. So
Yes.
pretty great.
I love that pick. It is a great song objectively, and I think that it's not even that, I don't know if it's a bold pick, but I think it's one that the way you described it is the drink you didn't know you needed, or it scratched the itch that you didn't know you had. Yeah, I would agree with that assessment. I also don't mind a Whole Lotta Love at 4 because there is the potential for overplaying it, and I will say that in my early days as a Zeppelin fan, it was not a song that I went back to all that much. For some reason, even when we did it as a cover, I loved it, but it was also, yeah, that's the hit. That's the hit song. A bit of overexposure. And yet over the years, the more I go back to it, I'm like, oh my God, I get it. It's like this thing is just an absolute beast. Nonetheless, pretty uniform in terms of groupings that we each had. You know what we forgot to do, and this is my bad. We did not predict. If you were to have predicted, what would you have said would have been my spiciest biscuit?
It's something I think about when I am obviously doing my ranking. It's like a little, little schmiggy on my shoulder. I'm like kind of keeping it right there at bay, thinking like, but it doesn't necessarily alter my picks. I mean, as clear as last week's, right? Like, can only at the end of the day go as far as what songs mean to you and how they resonate. I would have probably put, I don't know, man. I pinned you as either Heartbreaker or Ramble On as your one, just because I know the type of music that you write and what you look for to formulate a song, and both of those are sort of the backbone to the way it's done. Now, Whole Lotta Love is too, right?
But I could never, and this is why I put Whole Lotta Love 1. It's simple, but I'm never going to write something that is that uniquely groovin'. There is this weird, like, intangible quality to that song that I still am trying to figure out. I think over the years I've appreciated the fact that there's a way that they play it and there's a groove with which they play it that I just can't touch, and I like that. Ramble On, we cover Ramble On. I love it. I love that song so much. It was number 2. It might as well have been 1B. My top 3 were always going to be Whole Lotta Love, Ramble On, Heartbreaker in any particular order. I don't think Heartbreaker would ever have reached the heights of Whole Lotta Love and Ramble On for me, as much as I love it. Those 2 songs were 1 and 2, and then some separation. And then after Heartbreaker, some separation too. But the top 5 songs I have, Whole Lotta Love, Ramble On, Heartbreaker, Lemon Song, What Is and What Should Never Be. I think all of them, objective, 10 out of 10. Well, no, I don't know about 10 out of 10. Great studio cuts.
Yep.
Nothing about them I would change.
And I apologize. I guess we did have 2 and 3 at the same. But Ramble On and Heartbreaker were both 2 and 3 for us. So
that's fine. And then for me, 6 through 9. Why are they 6 through 9? Well, I would change some things about Bring It On Home and Moby Dick and Live and Love and Maid, which maybe I wouldn't change anything about it. It is what it is, which is kind of a throwaway. And then Thank You, I would just poop on it and then throw it in the garbage. And no, I feel bad saying that, but Zeppelin being earnest doesn't work all the time. When it hits, like in Going to California, there is a certain distance with which Robert writes those lyrics about the girl in California, about Joni Mitchell, the one he cannot have, that makes it work. It's Thank You, which is basically, hey, babe, sorry I'm I've been banging your sister. Here's my love song for you, that it doesn't land with me. So, yeah, we agreed on that. But I agree with your assessment that Moby Dick could be called the Dustiest Crumpet because it's not a great drum solo on record.
And I just also think, man, that like what's incredible about 1 and 2 so far, just to kind of tie all this in together, is that to any listener, average or not, Led Zeppelin, if you're into music, and you say something like, "Hey, man, what do you think of Led Zeppelin II?" Like immediately in their head, it sort of spawns like a holy grail-ish topic. But if you really put them on the spot and say, "Man, if you know it that well or whatever you're thinking about it, like what's your track listing?" Because for me, going through this exercise, mini series and going track by track, it's totally fair for the bottom half of our rankings here to adjust accordingly. It's just there's so many heavy hitters that have resonated over the years that sort of are the froth at the top, right? So like an album can be considered the best of what is on it, but it still works top to bottom.
Yep.
I think it comes down to the timing, the number of tracks that Zeppelin chose to put on, and then again the time frame for a total album run length is like not overdone, not underdone, and they got pretty playful with this one because even at the bottom half of what we've ranked this album at, still a completely enjoyable album, top to bottom, with the way that they sort of placed it all. And yeah, man, I think yet again, in my humble opinion, we've really given this album justice, and I was super excited to dive into this as quickly as we did because the very next morning, like I said on episode 1, I woke up, I got the family up and ready and out of the house, and my pregame for work before I dig in is to drive myself to the coffee shop, grab a coffee, drive through, and head home. And the whole while I was getting as much of Led Zeppelin 2 in as possible before I got back home. And, just can't say enough about this journey and what we've been doing. I know we've got one more segment here, and we're going to get better at this. But I do want to just kind of dive in really quick and just sort of level out a few of what is the top 10 when this album was released.
For context, it's important. Yeah.
Just for context, but I want to throw out some feelers here for you. Some will be more obvious than others, but can you guess the number 1 album the week of October 25th, 1969?
Led Zeppelin II.
The week it was released?
Was it not number 1 right away? It took a couple weeks. Okay, no, then I guess Abbey Road was still number 1.
Food for thought. It wasn't even in the top 10 the week it was released.
Interesting. Okay, so was Abbey Road still number 1?
It's not. Abbey Road was number 4.
Okay, artist or genre?
CCR.
Green River?
Got it.
Okay.
Yep. Number 2, parodied much later in the world by John C. Reilly.
Was it a Johnny Cash, Folsom Prison? Number
Johnny
2.
Cash, San Quentin, number 2.
San Quentin, okay.
The next would be a band that you and I have seen twice together. Should have seen 3 times, but COVID. First time would be at Soldier Field.
Okay.
Second, Brickyard.
Let it be. Let it be. Let it bleed, Rolling Stones.
Through the Past Darkly.
Oh, a greatest hits compilation. Okay.
Was that year? 4th,
Abbey Road.
5th, band by the name of Blind Faith.
Just self-titled, right? Oddly enough, the album cover of that. Have you seen that album cover?
I've not.
Turn on your safe search or turn it off. It's basically an underage girl, topless, holding a aluminum or chrome plane.
Oh wow!
What the hell?
It's
it was a different time.
Also, kind of looks like the kid from Elephant Man, but
as a adolescent girl, yeah, pretty much. All right, so that's number 5. That was Eric Clapton's supergroup. Yes.
Yeah. Crazy. Some great tunes, though. I mean,
yeah.
6 is a very interesting album name, one that would be well known though and recognized. Iron Butterfly.
In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, yeah.
Seventh self-titled album.
Self-titled, was it, rock genre?
Soul, rock.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Got it.
Okay.
8, Isaac Hayes.
1969, Hot Buttered Soul? Not
Mm.
Shaft yet.
Uh, 9, another Clapton. Clapton makes 2 appearances on this top 10.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. What was the Isaac Hayes album?
Oh, sorry. Hot Buttered Soul, you said it.
It was. Okay, good.
9, another Eric Clapton rendition.
Cream, Goodbye?
Best of Cream.
Best of Cream.
And then 10, self-titled album by a singular artist.
Pop, rock, what are we talking?
Rock, guitar virtuoso.
Ooh, solo artist, rock virtuoso. Have I or you seen them live before?
I have once, and he made an appearance with another band on KB's Top 10 Countdown, Kent Elmore and Ben Yates Top. He made his appearance on that countdown with the lead singer of Matchbox 20.
Of course, Carlos Santana. So just Santana debut album with Evil Ways, which I think was a Tito Puente song or something. It was, and then they covered it and it was a big hit. But yes, okay, that's a pretty good top 10 right there.
It is. And let me also just scroll all the way down because there's one last interesting slot here on the top 100. Coming in at number 81, this movie near and dear to our hearts. Can you guess what it was on the top 100?
Movie from 1969. Was it the Woodstock soundtrack? Would have been too early for that to come out. Easy Rider? No. What kind of movie are we talking about?
You and I have watched it many times, and
2001: A Space Odyssey soundtrack?
Number 81.
Hey, I have that on vinyl, by the way. I got it for like $4 at the local record shop.
So for the listeners, Mike and I have done a few times as we lived together the
Echoes,
Pink Floyd, and the teeing it up to
the Stargate sequence in 2001.
I've never done the countdown to the New Year's Eve, though. I hear that's pretty wicked too to do.
That would probably be sick. And there was a Pink Floyd movie that just came out recently where they performed Echoes and other songs live at Pompeii. And it was an IMAX. I didn't get a chance to see it because it wasn't in town. But yeah, the Echoes 2001 thing does work. But yeah, that soundtrack, classical songs, Stanley Kubrick did briefly reach out to Pink Floyd, and the speculation is that they recorded Echoes while watching the Stargate sequence. It does work eerily well. We got through a behemoth of an album, Ben. And as much fun as I had with that, I'm even more excited for next week.
I am too. This has been such an awesome experience so far. Like I said, I actually noted to myself, is it psychotic to admit I was ready to go for Zeppelin II like Friday morning after we'd woken up after our Thursday marathon of Zeppelin 1? But I don't think so. I think as we get into these mini-series and our chops continue to kind of grow around our segments and our flow, it's only going to get more and more fun, and it's just been a blast so far, man. And I think the takeaway is that we are obviously dealing with a band and starting out with a band that brought a whole lot to the table very early in one singular year with 2 albums. So I too am excited about Zeppelin 3. Like I said, there's nothing more gratifying than realizing that right now, when I shut it all down, finish my drink, and wake up tomorrow, that I get to start a new Zeppelin album. It's like a whole new experience. So
this album we're going to talk about next week, Led Zeppelin 3, is certifiably weird, and I say that as a compliment. It is a weird album. It is one that really kind of shocked listeners when it came out because it was so different from the first 2, and yet it is remarkably a leap forward. I think that you're going to find as you listen to it, and our listeners, if they do as well, that if you just put yourself in the context of listening to Led Zeppelin III a mere calendar year after listening to Led Zeppelin II, listening to it sonically, the way it was produced, the way the band was performing, it is vastly different. It's the same band because of all the ingredients that are there, but what they were doing collectively was very different. So I'm excited to talk about that. This is, by the way, I didn't even say this earlier, we're calling this miniseries The Pod Remains the Cast, and we are now 2 down with more classic albums. And even when we get to the clunkers, I'm excited to talk about those because Led Zeppelin may have had 1 or 2 of those. But for now, it's all gold. This is 1 year into the band. They're clicking on all cylinders, and that is not going to stop as we continue into 3, 4, and beyond. Ben, before we go, any parting shots? Any final thoughts?
No, man. Like I said, it's just been amazing so far. It's given me an extra step right now and some additional energy. And I think just for those that, find life monotonous and just all the information overflow and everything, obviously we always revert back to kind of movies and stuff that we may find comfort in and stuff, but this has done something for me that it's easy to jump into an album or a quick song or something on your playlist that sounds great, or a movie that makes you feel comfortable, or a new show or an old show. But to go top to bottom through classic albums, even if it's not Led Zeppelin, revisit some of the classics and, just kind of take a macro look at what the album is doing, and listen to some tracks that maybe you haven't listened to in years or ever for that matter, and kind of see where it sticks. And specifically Zeppelin 1 and 2, really easy to do. I mean, we are talking, 18 tracks in totality, where you can get through quickly what we've already covered, and just see kind of how you land, where you stick to, maybe revisit our rankings. And what I'm really looking forward to is this will come out, obviously, once this has been released, but Mike and I have sort of picked a release date for the first official pod. And, I'm excited that we've kind of come to terms with what those dates look like, and happy to be on this journey with you, man. I truly am. And I really look forward to waking up tomorrow, going to drive to get my coffee on a nice Wednesday, and queuing up track 1 of Led Zeppelin 3.
Immigrant Song on the Way to School. That'll do. I've done that before, and I'll do it again. And I'll do it again tomorrow as we get ready for this next podcast. So before we get out of here, appreciate you listeners for tuning in. We are now 2 episodes down. We're going to be releasing these each week. If you want to find us on our socials, we are at NeedleheadsPod on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we'll kind of gradually percolate to other areas as well. Maybe Reddit. I'm trying to figure out, can we start a subreddit, and do we need a certain amount of, I don't know. We want to start a discussion. We will find ways to organically do that with you, the listener. But we do appreciate those that are tuning in early, and spread the word, to anyone that just even is a passing fan of music. I hope that they can get something out of this. For Ben Yates.
Sorry. Hey, one last thing I have to bring. It just struck me whenever you brought that up. This will be an outtake, hopefully a side B of ours, if you will. But Mother's Day, Sunday, my neighbor, you well know, is Keith Johnson, a longtime friend who will be a fan of this and a listener, and he's really eager to get his chops going and dig into what we're talking about, and always offers his services if we ever go into the hardcore realm or the 90s grunge side of things, which we may. Nonetheless, his wife's mother always does the Turtle Run Winery, which is in southern Indiana, on Mother's Day. It's just a family-owned winery in the middle of nowhere, and they do live music, kind of BYOB, set up your tent. It's a very tailgate atmosphere, right? So her boyfriend is a chef friend of mine. He's a little bit older, very cool dude, is going to be there, and he gets there 5-6 hours early from us, sets up, okay? So long story short, we show up, kind of do the pleasantries and stuff like that. And Dan is his name, walks me over and introduces me to his dad, right? In his 80s. And I see that he's wearing sort of like a plaid shirt unbuttoned. And right below it is the 1970 black on white text Led Zeppelin t-shirt, that's pretty popular. You see it everywhere. So I immediately strike up a conversation with them, And I'm like, man, that's an amazing T-shirt. I was like, are you a fan? He's like, I am a lifelong fan of Zeppelin. Dan actually got me this T-shirt, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, it's crazy timing that you would choose to wear that today as, going through this journey with a buddy of mine. And the first mini series that we're recording is Led Zeppelin. So we've successfully made it through episode 1, Led Zeppelin 1. We're heading into Zeppelin 2 on Tuesday. So I love the shirt, man. And he immediately was like, please, let me know, what your podcast name is and when I can start to listen, amongst other family and friends, obviously, that, take an interest here. But he was serious, and he actually backed it up with the fact that there is not a whole lot out there in terms of just generalized lore and reaction to things like this day and age. I mean, you kind of got to go with either the, B movie style, overdubbed Amazon Prime documentaries, or obviously becoming Led Zeppelin, or kind of just doing your own research. But for that alone, I'm really excited about this, and I think that hopefully listeners will be eager to dig in with us. And it may seem off the bat like we're giving a lot of love to Led Zeppelin, but as we move on here, especially into some other artists, I assure you that Mike and I will have some diverse takes on what's to come and what artists we review. But wanted to share that story because I thought it was just so cool that it came at such a pleasant time for right between Zeppelin 1 and Zeppelin 2. So.
I mean, I think that could happen for Led Zeppelin 3. It's such a diverse album that I think our song rankings, while they were grouped together, there was some differences this week, maybe more than the previous week. I think next week even more so. Excited to hear your takes on it. I already kind of know mine, but I'm still kind of, tweaking my list and everything. But we will be back next week on Drop the Needleheads, The Pod Remains the Cast, where the records spin, the bourbon flows, the breakdowns are deeper, in this miniseries at least, than John Bonham's bass drum. For Ben Yates, Yahtzee.
See you later, and thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
I am Mike Carpenter, also known as Schmeggy. We don't call ourselves that, oddly enough, on this podcast, but I think it's easy for people to glean on to, right? We got those cute little avatars that are animated versions of us. It works.
That's our pod versions. It'll make sense when it makes sense.
We'll see you next week for at first, critically divisive album, but over the course of time, one that has generally been accepted as one of Led Zeppelin's best, Led Zeppelin III, next week on Drop the Needleheads. Drop the needleheads. Drop the